Chapter 1330. Illusory Net 9 Changes. Chunzong's figure swayed and split into two. One held a sword and charged toward the sky, while the other held a sword and swept forward. What kind of body movement is this? How could it be so brilliant? Seeing Chunzong split into two, everyone exclaimed. The four figures crossed each other in an instant. Chunzong felt that Lin Hemming, who was charging from the ground, was just an illusion. He was just trying to confuse him, but it seemed real. It was very brilliant. Chunzong's body movement also shocked Lin Hemming. Their figures crossed each other, and in an instant, they had exchanged dozens of blows. Lin Hemming's hands changed in an instant, but he couldn't break Chunzong's sword and attack Chunzong. The two landed on the ground together, turned around, and immediately rushed toward each other. Their speed was extremely fast, and their figures were graceful and agile. Cloud Crane 8 Absolutes. With a low shout, Lin Hemming's hands were filled with a jade-white luster, as if they were made of gold and iron, revealing an astonishing sharpness, like knives and swords. One hand was like the wings of a white crane, emitting a shocking luster and sharpness like knives and swords. The other hand was like the beak of a white crane, capable of piercing through heaven and earth, and sometimes changed into sharp claws to tear the sky. Point, cut, wipe, pierce, tear. In an instant, Lin Hemming's hands changed into many different moves, each of which was unique and mysterious, and also extraordinarily powerful. Every move was light and graceful, crafty and mysterious, and even sharp and incisive. Several layers of force interweaved and intertwined with each other, bursting forth with an even more shocking might. Good. Master's Cloud Crane 8 Absolutes is getting more and more exquisite. Lin Hemming's servant was secretly excited. He had followed Lin Hemming for many years and had seen Lin Hemming practice, so he had some understanding of it. Therefore, the servant was sure that his master would win. However, what happened next made him feel incredulous and shocked. The challenger actually blocked his master's Cloud Crane 8 Absolutes. What sort of move is that? It's watertight and airtight. There's actually such a move. One by one, they exclaimed in surprise at Chunzong's sword move. The sword circle was unbreakable within a radius of 5 feet. Although Lin Hemming's Cloud Crane 8 Ultimate Hands was extremely exquisite, it was completely blocked by Chunzong's unbreakable sword circle. Ever since he had comprehended the secrets of the heart sword, the unbreakable sword circle had been perfected. Unless Lin Hemming was much stronger than Chunzong in terms of absolute strength, it would be very difficult for him to break the sword circle. Lin Hemming was incomparably shocked. It was the first time he had encountered such an opponent. In the past, if he executed the Cloud Crane 8 Extinction technique, he would be able to defeat his opponent in a short period of time. After all, the Cloud Crane 8 Extinction technique was extremely exquisite and varied, and its application of strength was extremely brilliant. Or, the other party tried their best to resist, but was still defeated by his Cloud Crane 8 Ultimate Hands. Either that, or the opponent's strength was greater than his, and he was defeated instead. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation where his attack was completely blocked. Lin Hemming even had a feeling from the depths of his heart that no matter how he attacked, he would not be able to break the sword circle. If he couldn't break the sword circle, he wouldn't be able to attack his opponent, let alone defeat him. It seemed that he had suddenly reached a stalemate. Chunzong was also very surprised. Lin Hemming's moves were extremely exquisite and powerful. Under normal circumstances, Chunzong found that he could only defend against Lin Hemming's attacks and had no power to counterattack. This also showed that Lin Hemming was very strong. For a moment, Chunzong had no intention of counterattacking. He executed the unbreakable sword circle to defend against Lin Hemming's attacks, while carefully observing and studying the mysteries of the Cloud Crane 8 Extinction technique. This martial art was extremely brilliant. It constantly concentrated and condensed power on the 5 fingers and the edge of the palm to avoid wastage. It could exert the power of one's own strength to the extreme. Moreover, The speed of each attack was different, making it difficult to grasp the rhythm and pattern. The strength of each attack was uncertain, making it even more difficult to grasp the strength of each attack. If the attack was too light, it would be impossible to defend. If the attack was too heavy, the strength would be too strong and erratic, and the opponent would be able to seize the opportunity. Moreover, the moves were ever-changing and difficult to grasp. This was a very profound martial art. Perhaps it was not a high-grade martial art in the saint level, but Lin Hemming had been immersed in it for many years and had already thoroughly understood its mysteries. When he executed it, its power was unparalleled and mysterious. Stones from other mountains could be used to polish jade. Why did Zong come to the central district of Xiaming? Wasn't it to compete with other geniuses? Why do you want to compete with other geniuses? Naturally, it was to see the techniques of other geniuses and hone himself. As a person on the Netherworld ranking, Lin Hemming's cultivation was profound and his martial arts attainments were extraordinary. In other words, he was a very good whetstone. Of course, one had to be careful when choosing a whetstone. Otherwise, not only would the sword not be sharpened, but would also be worn out in the end. 15 minutes. Lin Hemming executed the Cloud Crane 8 extinction hands for a full 15 minutes. He attacked continuously from all directions, but no matter how fast or slow he was, no matter how strong or weak he was, no matter how upright or crafty he was, they were all intercepted by Zong's sword. Zong's sword seemed to have a unique intelligence. It blocked all the blind spots and did not break at all. It was as if Zong had already predicted his attacks and intercepted them. It was as if he had deliberately attacked the sword. Every time he attacked, the sword would burst out with an astonishing force, forcing Lin Hemming to spend more energy to break it down. Zong's strength was clearly inferior to his, but his sword technique was extremely exquisite. This defensive sword technique, especially, could be said to be indestructible. There's no such thing as indestructible in this world. Watch how I, Lin Hemming, break you. Lin Hemming's ambition and fighting spirit were also aroused. His aura became stronger and sharper. There seemed to be a touch of white blooming in the depths of Lin Hemming's eyes. He opened his arms, and his short robe fluttered as if it was being blown by a strong wind. His aura overflowed and spread between his arms, as if it had turned into a pair of wings. Cloud Crane 8 Extinction Technique. Crane Wing Slash. He roared in his heart, and his aura increased explosively. His mind was like a knife. The white crane spread its wings and raised its arms high. An astonishing sharpness erupted from the edge of its palms. His arms were like knives, and the knives cut through the sky. Slash! When his arms fell, it was as if a heavenly knife had descended. From afar, this knife looked like a giant white crane flapping its wings. When the knife slashed down, a sharp cry rang out in the sky. This knife was as white as the wings of a white crane. It was like the clouds in the sky. In an instant, it seemed to split the battle arena and the sky into two. Everyone outside the battle arena was shocked. They felt as if the saber was going to split them in half. They were extremely shocked. Zong's expression was solemn. Crane Wing Slash. So strong, so strong. The shocking pressure from the knife made Zong feel powerless. It was as if he couldn't break the sword circle, and he couldn't completely block it. Not only did this knife have terrifying power, but it also contained shocking profoundness. It was enough to break his unbreakable sword circle under normal circumstances. With this kind of strength, even if he couldn't defeat an early First Heaven Saint Realm expert, he could still hold his own. Previously, Zong had killed a First Heaven Saint Realm expert, but that was under the circumstances of using the innate ferocious force field. Now that he was fighting Lin Hemming, Zong didn't intend to use such a method. However, the strength of the people on the Netherworld ranking was not to be underestimated. Then, how strong were the people ranked in the top 10 of the Netherworld ranking? Could they really contend with an ordinary First Heaven Saint Realm expert? Or could they kill a Saint Realm expert? When Zong was in the 4 upper regions, he knew that a half-step Saint Realm expert couldn't fight a Saint Realm expert, let alone kill one. However, after coming to the Tianyuan sacred region, Chunzong had done it. Although he had relied on the strength of Azura's clone, at least on the surface, he had killed a First Heaven Saint Realm expert. If he could do it, others could do it as well. The Tianyuan sacred region was the highest place in the Lingwu holy world. The cultivation path was the most prosperous, the resources were the most abundant, and the inheritances were the most complete and profound. Anything was possible. Chunzong wasn't arrogant enough to think that he was the most outstanding, lucky, and brilliant. The world was so big. There were so many cultivators and so many outstanding geniuses. However, it was precisely because of this that the world was more exciting. The thought flashed through Chunzong's mind in an instant. With his current speed of thought, it didn't affect him at all. In the end, his cultivation was still too low. On the surface, he was a mid-level half-step saint, but in reality, he was at the limit of the transcendent realm. There was a huge gap between him and a high-level half-step saint. The crane wing instantly increased Lin Hemming's strength by a lot. Its power was terrifying, and it was much stronger than the heavenly wolf sex man with the giant axe. One slash was enough to kill him. This slash also posed a great threat to Chunzong. Heart domain. In an instant, with a thought, the power of his mind was consumed, and an invisible force spread out, covering a radius of 5 meters. Chunzong could clearly sense everything within 5 meters of him. When that pure white saber light arrived and hacked into his heart domain, its speed seemed to suddenly decrease and slow down. However, in the eyes of outsiders and Lin Hemming, the crane wing didn't slow down. Its speed was still amazing, as if it was going to split the world. However, after entering the heart domain, Chunzong could clearly perceive the 5-meter radius. It was much stronger than usual, 10 times stronger. Therefore, in Chunzong's perception, the crane wing seemed to have slowed down. The strength of the saber light was also clearly perceived by Chunzong. The sword was out. It seemed to be a defense, a counterattack, and a slash through the weak points. The crane wing saber light suddenly trembled and burst out with a terrifying power. However, in the heart domain, Chunzong's perception was also magnified 10 times. The speed of his sword was amazing. From the outside, only the flickering of the sword light blocked the pure white saber light, and then shattered it. Immediately, the bloody light filled the air, turning into a ghastly slash that broke through the air. Blood splattered with a sword. This sword strike was clearly much more refined than before. Lin Hemming's heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed drastically. He hurriedly performed his body movement, nimbly and swiftly dodging like a white crane soaring in the sky. A bright blood flower bloomed in front of his eyes, as if covering a part of the world. Immediately, a spot of bloody light spat out like a stamen. It burst out at an amazing speed, like lightning breaking through the air. Too fast. It was incomparably fast, so fast that it was shocking. Chapter 1331. The droplets of blood rolled in the air, emitting a dazzling radiance under the sunlight as they fell slowly. However, the figure dissipated in an instant and reappeared not far away, as if it had teleported. Lin Hemming still had a lingering fear. The sword just now was too fast, and he was almost hit. Although he managed to dodge in time, the back of his hand was cut open, and 2 drops of blood spilled out. Chunzong couldn't help but marvel at the fact that his opponent was still able to dodge his sword. The heavy dragon's sword returned to its scabbard, and the mountain beheading sword appeared in his hand. The mountain beheading sword was much heavier than the heavy dragon sword, but it didn't affect Chunzong much. On the contrary, the heavier the sword, the more power it could unleash. Moreover, the mountain beheading sword was a mid-grade half-saint weapon, and it had the power of a mid-grade half-saint. Seeing Chunzong change his sword and the pressure emanating from it, Lin Hemming squinted his eyes. He was both fearful and excited. It was just a slight injury on the back of his hand, and it didn't affect his strength at all. Lin Hemming shook his arms, and rays of light flew out like feathers. They circled around his arms and condensed into a pair of vambraces. The vambraces were attached to gloves, and Lin Hemming's arms and hands changed drastically. An astonishing aura emanated from them. Half-saint weapon. Moreover, it was a high-grade half-saint weapon. Raising his arms, he leaped into the air like a heavenly crane soaring in the sky. He launched the Cloud Crane 8 ultimate hands again. Under the influence of a high-grade half-saint weapon, the power of each move of the Cloud Crane 8 ultimate hands became even more frightening and astonishing. However, Chunzong, who was using the Mountain Beheading Sword, used the Unbreakable Sword Circle and blocked all of Lin Hemming's attacks within a radius of 5 feet. Chunzong demonstrated the power of the Unbreakable Sword Circle once again. The Unbreakable Sword Circle under the Heart Domain was even more frightening. Not only did it completely block Lin Hemming's Cloud Crane 8 ultimate hands, but it also countered his opponent's weak points. The power of each counterattack was extremely tyrannical, and Lin Hemming had no choice but to defend himself. His continuous attacks were interrupted repeatedly. Heavenly Crane Technique. A low chant, like a white crane's sharp and resounding cry, rang out. His aura was like flames, and it transformed into a white crane phantom that soared into the sky. It made a perfect turn in the air and swooped down. Boom! The white crane's phantom and Lin Hemming's aura, the power of the Cloud Crane 8 demise hands, was even stronger. Celestial Crystal Body. Chunzong also used his secret technique. The Heavenly Crystal Battle Body was already at small accomplishment, and the increase in his strength was even more obvious. 10 shadows, 10 blades kill. In an instant, Lin Hemming turned himself into a sword. 10 silhouettes and 10 beams of sword light swept out in all directions, surrounding him and attacking. His cultivation, martial arts, and secret techniques were all displayed. Lin Hemming unleashed his full strength, and so did Chunzong. As the battle became more and more intense, the spectators around the battle arena were shocked beyond words. This man, named Chunzong, was able to fight Lin Hemming to this extent. The Netherworld Board. This person definitely has the strength of someone on the Netherworld list. If he can defeat Lin Hemming, his words set off a storm in everyone's hearts. The 108 spots on the Dark Roll had not changed for a year. Or rather, the changes in the rankings were limited to the people on the Dark Roll. No newcomer had successfully challenged the Dark Roll. Could it be that the unchanging situation of the past year was about to be broken today? Thinking of this, everyone could not help but feel a little excited. No one cared whether Lin Hemming could still win and maintain his position on the Dark Roll. Relatively speaking, if Lin Hemming was defeated, it would be more exciting because it meant that another master with the strength of someone on the Dark Roll had appeared. Everyone held their breaths and watched the fierce battle between Chunzong and Lin Hemming, secretly looking forward to it. Lin Hemming's servant clenched his fists and secretly encouraged his master, hoping that he could defeat his opponent again. Master and servant shared honor and disgrace. If Lin Hemming was defeated, he would naturally be somewhat affected. After a series of attacks, Lin Hemming's expression became more and more serious. Maintaining such a high-intensity attack consumed a lot of his strength, and he also had to deal with the opponent's fierce and heavy counterattacks, which consumed a lot of his mind. Compared with Chunzong, Lin Hemming was obviously lacking in tenacity. Of course, he was much stronger than ordinary high-level half-saints. Lin Hemming's strength was very strong, which made Chunzong feel a great deal of pressure. Without using the power of Azura's doppelganger, it was very difficult to win. Even now, all he could do was not to be defeated. This was a tug of war. But Chunzong could also feel that under such a high-intensity battle, his own potential was being squeezed out little by little. This was also what Chunzong needed. He needed to squeeze out his own potential and make further progress in Qi cultivation. He needed to build a perfect foundation for Qi cultivation. At that time, he could break through to the half-saint level. Only in this way could he fully exert his own potential and talent. Chunzong could feel that in this high-intensity battle with Lin Hemming, the bottleneck of his Qi cultivation seemed to have loosened a little, but he did not know if it was an illusion. Fight! constantly squeezing out his own strength, constantly resisting and counterattacking, and as much as possible forcing his opponent to show more strength. Sharpen. A sword's edge was sharpened through sharpening. Without sharpening, how could it be cast into a peerless edge? Lin Hemming tried his best. He also wanted to find an opportunity to break through. Chunzong was undoubtedly a very good opponent. Perhaps he could further stimulate his own potential and help him find an opportunity to break through. Both of them had their own purposes, but they were both doing their best. Fight, fight, fight. The collision of the fist and the sword caused the power to surge in all directions, like a storm overflowing. Their strength was rapidly depleted, and white smoke rose from their bodies in spirals. Cloud Crane 8 skills. Crane Chisel Air. Lin Hemming's expression was incomparably solemn. His short robe fluttered, and his black hair danced wildly like a roaring gale. The last of his strength erupted in an instant without reservation. This attack was also his last attack. The power of this attack was no longer contained. If this strike could not defeat Chunzong, he would not have the strength to fight again. This was also the strongest move that Lin Hemming had mastered. It was a move that he had comprehended in the past 6 months. The 5 fingers of his right hand closed together. All of his strength surged and gathered. A white shadow spread its wings and rose up. Its long neck was bent, and its sharp mouth stretched forward. It seemed to merge into his right hand. With a slight movement, an incomparably sharp and resounding sound rang out. It was as if it could pierce through gold and crack stone. The faces of the people around the martial arts arena changed greatly. They felt as if their eardrums were being pierced and torn apart. Chunzong, who bore the brunt of the attack, looked extremely dignified. The extremely sharp sound pierced his eardrums, as if it wanted to mince his brain. Fortunately, Chunzong's soul was very strong. His spiritual willpower was also incomparably tough. His sea of consciousness was stable. The impact of this level of sound wave was not enough to affect him. Lin Hemming's strike was like a white crane descending from the sky. This strike was incomparably sharp. It seemed that nothing in the world could withstand it. Anything that was hard would be shattered. With his super strong perception, Chunzong could feel the power of this strike. It was indeed much more powerful than the previous crane wing chop. Even if the secret method and the enhancement of the high-grade half-divine weapon were excluded, it was still more powerful than the previous crane wing chop. It was at least 30% stronger. When one's strength reached this level, a 30% increase in strength was undoubtedly terrifying. This strike was not only powerful, but it also contained a kind of conviction, a kind of desperation. It was as if one would fight to the death. This kind of attack was the most difficult to resist. It was a kind of desperation that even if the opponent was a Saint Realm Master, he would still wound the opponent with this strike. With this strike, Chunzong's expression became extremely dignified. He pushed his heart domain to the extreme. The power of his spiritual energy was madly consumed, as if it was being burned by a raging fire. This was also the first time Chunzong had stimulated his heart domain like this. Everything within a 5-meter radius seemed to have become clearer. Vaguely, Chunzong had a feeling that he could control everything within a 5-meter radius. The incomparably sharp strike entered his heart domain. Its speed was sharply reduced, but the power of this strike shocked Chunzong even more. However, at the same time, Chunzong also discovered a flaw in it. Lin Hemming had not fully grasped this strike, so although it was very powerful, under the influence of his heart domain, its flaw was even more obvious than the crane wing slash. Following the flaw, Chunzong erupted with his full strength. A bloody light flashed and swept out in all directions. Blood splattered everywhere. Kill! The sound of something breaking through the air was extremely sharp. A bloody light seemed to tear the sky apart. Lin Hemming's shocking strike paused for a moment. The moment it was about to hit Chunzong, it dissipated like smoke. The mountain beheading sword carried with it the aftermath and directly sent Lin Hemming flying, causing him to vomit blood. Lin Hemming had used the crane chiseling sword without any regard for the consequences. He did not have much strength left, so naturally, he could not resist the aftermath of Chunzong's sword. "Master!" Lin Hemming's servant exclaimed. Lin Hemming flew back 100 meters. After landing, he slid back a few meters before regaining his balance. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Lin Hemming's face was pale and his eyes were filled with fatigue. With a sword in his hand, Chunzong's back was as straight as a sword. His body was filled with an astonishing aura that soared into the sky. It seemed that Chunzong was still very strong, like a sharpened sword. However, Chunzong knew that his super spiritual energy was almost exhausted. The power of his mind had also been consumed by more than 70%. This battle was very difficult. Of course, Chunzong still had the strength to fight, and that was his body refining ability. After cultivating the Hellfire chapter, Chunzong's body refining ability was very strong. It was enough to defeat ordinary low-level half-saints. Looking at Chunzong, whose aura was still very strong, Lin Hemming could not help but reveal a bitter smile. He did not know whether Chunzong was strong in appearance, or if Chunzong still had some strength left. However, he did use all his strength. He did not have the strength to fight again. He could only admit defeat in this battle. The only pity was that he did not find the opportunity to break through as he wished. Cupping his hands, Lin Hemming turned around and walked down the battle arena. His servant immediately rushed up to support him. The surroundings were silent. Suddenly, there was an explosion. The momentum was like a tide or a tsunami. Lin Hemming was defeated. Moreover, he was not defeated by someone on the dark list, but by a newcomer. This meant that Lin Hemming's name would disappear from the dark list and be replaced by the name of Chunzong. The rules of the dark list were simple and direct. Those who were defeated, no matter what their previous ranking was, would be replaced. If they were defeated by someone on the dark list, their ranking would be swapped. If they were defeated by a newcomer, their ranking would be replaced by the newcomer. Naturally, their names would be removed from the dark list. If they wanted to enter the dark list again, they would have to challenge again. Chapter 1332. There was a Xianming district in Xianming City and 108 Xianming courtyards in the Xianming district. This was the preferential treatment that Xianming City gave to the prodigies on the dark ranking. As for the powerhouses on the dark ranking, they were all at least at the 9th level Saint Rudiment stage. They were either important figures from large forces or unaffiliated cultivators. Basically, they would not stay in Xianming City. The 108 Xianming courtyards were not completely adjacent to each other. Instead, they were separated by a distance of about a few thousand meters. This way, their daily cultivation would not affect each other. Similarly, the 108 Xianming courtyards also had their own branches. Number 1 was the highest and largest, while number 108 was the lowest and smallest. This showed the difference. However, most of the prodigies on the dark ranking were not in the city. A considerable number of them came from various large forces. They usually went out to train or stayed in their respective forces to cultivate. 2 people were drinking in number 84 Xianming courtyard. One of them was dressed in a purple robe. He seemed to be noble, but his long and narrow eyes gave off a cold feeling. One of them was dressed in black, perfectly accentuating the contours of his steel-like muscles. Sitting there, he was like an iron mountain, suppressing everything in all directions with an incomparably majestic aura. Lin Hemming was actually defeated by a newcomer. This is really unexpected. The young man, who was as strong as an ancient beast, grinned. He immediately grabbed a large bowl and drank all the wine in it in one gulp. Lin Hemming is just a piece of trash who has exhausted his potential. It's only a matter of time before he's defeated. The purple-robed young man with long and narrow eyes said disdainfully, "Moreover, the person who defeated Lin Hemming fought with all his strength until the end. It's nothing. Even so, this person's cultivation is at the intermediate half-saint realm. His strength can continue to improve," the young man in black said thoughtfully. "Even if he improves, he'll at most be ranked in the top 100. It's nothing to worry about," the purple-robed young man said disdainfully. He was ranked 84th on the dark ranking. He was very strong. He could defeat someone with Lin Hemming's strength in just a few moves. A person who had to exhaust all his strength to defeat Lin Hemming was nothing at all. The young man in black did not say anything after hearing the purple-robed young man's words. Zong stayed in the 105th room of the Xianming courtyard. The original owner, Lin Hemming, naturally took his things and left. What a dense heaven-earth essence energy. When Zong walked into the 105th Xianming courtyard, he was secretly surprised. The yuan qi of heaven and earth here was more than twice as rich and pure as that of the restaurant he had stayed in before. Staying in such a place for a long time was very beneficial to the improvement of one's cultivation. Even if one's cultivation reached its limit, it would still be beneficial. The space here was not very big, and the layout was also relatively simple. However, it looked very comfortable, as if it had been arranged by a brilliant method, making it easier for people to enter a state of cultivation. Not bad. Zong was secretly delighted. He did not expect to gain such an unexpected benefit from this trial. As for what would happen to Lin Hemming, Zong didn't give it much thought. The world was that simple and straightforward. The bottleneck of qi cultivation has loosened slightly. Let me try and see if I can cultivate the 9th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping technique, Zong thought to himself. He stayed in the 105th Xianming courtyard and began to cultivate. The outside world was bustling with noise and excitement because of Zong's defeat of Lin Hemming. Immediately, some information about Zong was dug up, but not much was dug up. They only knew that he was a rogue cultivator from the Purple Mountain Prefecture. Of course, the saying that he had cultivated in seclusion with his master from a small place like the Purple Mountain Prefecture until his master passed away was an excuse made up by Zong. After all, this world was very complicated. There were indeed some experts who were not famous and indifferent to fame and fortune. They lived in seclusion in a remote place. They would teach some disciples, and when they reached a certain level, they would let their disciples go out to train and hone themselves. Although there were not many examples like this, they did exist, so it was not easy to arouse suspicion. Even if some people wanted to investigate, they would not be able to find any evidence to prove that Zong was lying. If Zong said that he came from the ancient Wind Mansion, and if the people of the ancient Wind Mansion found out about it, there was no guarantee that there wouldn't be some unforeseen events. He's from the Purple Mountain Prefecture, and his name is Zong. Li Shilong, who had just arrived in Xianming City, seemed to have thought of something when he heard the news. His eyes suddenly shot out a sharp, cold light that was like cold lightning. "Uncle Lu, please go and find out more details," Li Shilong said to the middle-aged man beside him. "Okay." The middle-aged man looked like a man of few words, and his answer was very simple. "If it's really you, then it's just right." Li Shilong's eyes flashed with an extremely sharp killing intent. That person looks a little familiar. I recognize him. He's Li Shilong, a prodigy ranked 93rd on the Netherworld leaderboard. The passers-by stared at the figure in a black robe embroidered with silver wolf patterns and exclaimed, "Things seem to be a little different these days." Prodigies on the Netherworld leaderboard are appearing frequently. Don't you know? The wine that person brewed is going to be open again. Oh, the Prodigy Wine Tasting Conference is going to start again. Soon, I think. It should be this month. The wine that person brewed is not ordinary. If I'm lucky enough to taste a cup, I'll have no regrets in life. Haha, you're dreaming. Unfortunately, only true prodigies are qualified to be invited. But I don't know who will be invited this time. Those who are on the Netherworld leaderboard will definitely be invited. In the past, if those who were on the Netherworld leaderboard were in the city, they would most likely be invited. Some of the famous prodigies should also be invited. According to the situation of the past prodigy wine tasting conferences, that seemed to be the case. If there were no changes this time, 10 years of Chinquan pot, sun and moon refining true body. Prodigy wine tasting conference. Zong stared at the green fluorescent post in his hand and read the contents as he muttered to himself. Within the fluorescent light, there seemed to be a faintly discernible wine fragrance. Chunzong's nose twitched a few times unconsciously, trying to distinguish the wine fragrance clearly. However, the wine fragrance was very subtle, faintly discernible, like a hidden fragrance floating. Chunzong seemed to want to catch it, but he couldn't. It constantly affected Chunzong's heart. Taking a deep breath, Chunzong calmed down, but a smile hung on the corner of his mouth. To be honest, Chunzong's interest had been completely aroused. Chunzong was only interested in the wine at the Prodigy Wine Tasting Conference. Other than swords, good wine was also one of Chunzong's favorites. Every time he went to a new place, he would definitely find a famous restaurant to taste good wine. Only then would the trip not be in vain. However, the Prodigy Wine Tasting Conference seems to be quite interesting. I have to ask someone. Chunzong, whose interest had been piqued, stepped out of the 105th Xianming courtyard and strode outside. Chunzong could only be considered as a newcomer. His understanding of the history of Xianming City was still quite superficial. He had just heard about the Prodigy Wine Tasting Conference. As the person who received the invitation, if he didn't understand it, he would be too blind to know anything when the time came. However, those who grew up in Xianming City were quite familiar with the so-called Prodigy Wine Tasting Conference. It didn't take long for Chunzong to get the relevant information. I see. Chunzong suddenly understood. This so-called Prodigy Wine Tasting Conference was actually quite private. It was privately started by an eccentric senior master who lived in seclusion in Xianming City. This senior master loved wine and liked to brew his own wine. Not only was the wine he brewed delicious and memorable, but it also contained extraordinary effects. It was unknown whether it was because of his hobby or other reasons, but since 80 years ago, this senior would hold a wine tasting conference every 10 years. The people he invited were the true geniuses of a younger generation who had yet to reach the saint realm. Only true geniuses were qualified to be invited. In addition, if that genius happened to be in Xianming City, the senior master wouldn't pay attention to him if he didn't. Basically, as long as one was in Xianming City, those who were on the dark list and those who had been on the dark list in the past would receive an invitation. Those who could receive an invitation were usually young, but had extraordinary talent. Although they weren't on the dark list, they had extraordinary talent and potential. They were rising stars. Wine Venerable is really interesting. After inquiring about the news, Chunzong returned to the 105th Xianming courtyard in the Xianming district. However, just as he arrived at his own Xianming courtyard, Chunzong stopped in his tracks. This was because there were two figures walking towards him. One of them was a young man in a black robe. He had sharp features and a pair of cold eyes that glowed with a hint of green light. He looked like a ferocious wolf hiding in the dark, staring at its prey and ready to pounce and tear it to pieces at any time. The black-robed young man's cold and terrifying eyes stared at Chunzong from hundreds of meters away, as if he wanted to see through Chunzong. Chunzong was slightly taken aback. His eyes narrowed as he felt a sense of threat from the other party. It seemed that this person's strength was stronger than Lin Hemming's. Immediately, Chunzong also noticed the middle-aged man next to the black-robed young man. He looked cold and old-fashioned, and he seemed to be a man of few words. However, he posed an even greater threat, causing Chunzong's heart to skip a beat. He was very strong. This middle-aged man was definitely a Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. He was not comparable to a first or second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. Even if Chunzong used his Azura doppelganger, he would not be a match for him. You are Chunzong, the Chunzong who ruined my Heavenly Wolf Sect's plan and killed my Heavenly Wolf Sect's disciples. The black-robed young man, Li Xielang, asked. His voice was extremely cold, bringing with it a sharp cold wind. Heavenly Wolf Sect. Chunzong's eyes narrowed. He was somewhat surprised. He did not expect to meet someone from the Heavenly Wolf Sect here. This was the Xianming district, and people who were not from the Xianming courtyard could not enter and leave at will. In other words, this person was most likely a genius on the dark list. Moreover, this person was from the Heavenly Wolf Sect. Chunzong understood the purpose of this person. However, Chunzong was not afraid. The only thing he was wary of was the silent, middle-aged man, who was very threatening. Chapter 1333. I've never participated in a wine tasting conference before. I wonder what the wine tastes like. A wild young man with long hair let out a hearty laugh. Legend has it that the universal sun moon wine is not only memorable, but can also stimulate one's potential and improve one's cultivation, a heroic female cultivator said as her eyes lit up with anticipation. This is a good opportunity to drink the universal sun moon wine and defeat the underworld list geniuses, the arrogant young man sneered, his words revealing his supreme confidence. Don't be careless. Every underworld list genius has extraordinary strength, the woman said solemnly. So what? I'm more talented than them, the arrogant young man sneered. The Universal Garden was located in the east of dark, mysterious city. It was a huge garden, and its owner was the eccentric and famous Wine Venerable. Wine Venerable usually stayed in the Universal Garden to brew wine. Many St. Rudiment stage powerhouses wanted to taste his wine, but it was difficult. If one could not catch Wine Venerable's eye, it would be useless even if one was at the peak of the St. Rudiment stage. If he did not give a damn about you, he would not give a damn about you. Using force? Wine Venerable was not afraid. There was once a peak St. Rudiment stage powerhouse who wanted to buy Wine Venerable's wine. Wine Venerable did not like him and refused to sell. In the end, the peak St. Rudiment stage powerhouse became angry and tried to rob him. Not only did he not get what he wanted, but he was also injured by Wine Venerable and fled in panic. Since then, many people knew that Wine Venerable's strength was not to be underestimated and should not be provoked easily. It was not a wise choice to make an enemy out of Wine Venerable for some wine. The gate of the Universal Garden was usually closed and unimportant people were not allowed to enter. Today, the gate of the Universal Garden was open to welcome guests from all over the world. Even so, only the young geniuses who had received an invitation were qualified to enter. There was no guard at the gate, and there was no need to verify the invitation. If one barged in without an invitation, Wine Venerable would not be easy to fool and would kill them without mercy. This kind of thing had happened before. Chunzong stepped into the Universal Garden and immediately had a wonderful feeling. Everything here, whether it was the vegetation, the rockery, or the flowing water, was filled with the mysterious feeling of the universe. It was as if he had stepped into another world. All the hustle and bustle faded away in an instant. It was as if he was the only one left in the world. However, there were clearly other people walking around him, as if they were projections from another world. It was quiet, but not lonely. Instead, there was a kind of enjoyment. His mind unknowingly relaxed, as if he had unloaded a heavy burden. Small paths made of green jade, white jade, red jade, and other crushed stones intertwined and extended in different directions. Different people would randomly choose different paths to enter. Chunzong casually chose a small path that was azure in color and stepped onto it as if he was walking on a path by himself. There were small dark green bamboos planted on both sides of the path, and the tender bamboo leaves swayed with the breeze while emitting strands of bamboo fragrance that refreshed the heart. The small path was quiet, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. Chunzong's pace was not fast. After walking for about half an hour, he finally walked out of the small path and saw several figures walking out from other small paths. Different paths lead to the same destination. Chunzong smiled faintly as he gained some enlightenment. This enlightenment might be useless now, but it would settle down and reappear when the opportunity was right in the future. Cultivators, step by step, whether intentional or not, it was a kind of accumulation. Some accumulations could be sensed, while others could not. Some accumulations had immediate effects, while others had to wait for the right time to show their extraordinariness. Many small paths led to the same destination by different paths, which contained some kind of truth. However, some people could comprehend it, while others could ignore it. Seeing the expressions on everyone's faces, Chunzong had another enlightenment. Cultivation is everywhere, Chunzong said to himself. Cultivation methods and martial arts were a kind of cultivation. However, cultivation was not simple. It contained thousands of things. A blade of grass had its mysterious charm, and a leaf had its profound texture. Comprehending, it was also cultivation. For a moment, Chunzong felt enlightened. Walking into the deepest part of the universe garden, there was a huge circular area. Around the circular area, there was a circular wheel that was about a meter in radius. There were many mysterious patterns carved on the wheel, and they looked very complicated. They seemed to be patterns of 100 flowers, or patterns of 100 beasts, or patterns of mountains and rivers. The wheel surrounded the huge circular platform and floated 2 meters above the platform. There were dozens of them. One by one, they leaped into the air and displayed their profound movement techniques. They landed on the roulette and sat down cross-legged. Chunzong also understood. After thinking for a while, he leaped up and landed on one of the wheels like a wisp of smoke or a feather. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew over, carrying with it a bit of sharpness, as if it wanted to pierce through his body. Chunzong saw another person flying over from another direction, like a long blade cutting through the air. His target was also the roulette he had chosen. There were many empty wheels, but he insisted on competing with him. However, Chunzong had no intention to compete with him. It was just a wheel. If he wanted it, he would give it to him. Of course, if there was only one wheel left, Chunzong would not give it to him. After all, Chunzong's realm was higher than his opponent's, and his temperament was also better than his opponent's. This kind of competition was completely unnecessary. His figure flashed in the air. It seemed simple, but in fact, it was very clever. He landed on another empty wheel. On the other hand, Chunzong's competitor was rather pleased as he landed on the roulette that Chunzong had originally chosen. This scene was naturally seen by many people. Zhao Yuan is too arrogant. Sooner or later, he will suffer losses. The wild young man frowned slightly. He has always been like this. It's not like you don't know. The heroic female cultivator said with a wry smile. Maybe only when he really suffers a big loss will he change. It's hard to say. The wild young man shook his head. Some people were like this. Some people were talented and capable. After being flattered by others, they would become arrogant and overconfident. They would show off their abilities and become aggressive. They would always want to prove that they were stronger than others. They would subconsciously look down on this and that. This kind of person would indeed suffer a big loss. It was just a matter of time. Once he suffered a big loss, there were usually 2 results. One was that he would be hit hard and never recover. The other was that he would repent after learning from the painful experience. His temperament would be greatly improved, and he would become introverted. He would definitely become a great person. The latter was often more difficult than the former. However, the 2 of them admired Chunzong very much. To put it bluntly, this kind of practice was a kind of provocation. If it were a person with a bad temper or a bad temperament, he would definitely compete and even get really angry. But what was the point of it in the end? It was meaningless. It was purely a meaningless fight. That was something that only low-level cultivators would do. The truly brilliant cultivators, regardless of their temperament, all possessed a higher level of cultivation and temperament. Very few of them would engage in meaningless battles for no reason. Of course, nothing was absolute. Some people with a fierce temperament did not care about whether they were low-level or high-level or had a peaceful temperament. They would attack when they were unhappy. There were also some people who were temperamental and killed at will. But in any case, the 2 of them admired Chunzong. This had always been Chunzong's temperament. He usually looked peaceful and restrained, like a sword in a scabbard. Chunzong had never participated in small and meaningless fights. Even if it involved him, he would avoid it as much as possible. Some people understood and agreed with him, but some people did not. In the end, it was a difference in temperament and principles. Humph! I thought the people on the Netherworld role were something great. The arrogant young man who occupied Chunzong's will sneered. He looked at Chunzong from the corner of his eyes and did not hide his voice. Zhao Yuan, enough is enough. The arrogant young man frowned and shouted in a low voice. Why? Do you think I'm wrong? Zhao Yuan retorted. Chunzong ignored him. Soon after, all 40 wheels were filled with people. Immediately, a small wheel rose from the original wheel and floated in front of everyone. The small well had complicated markings and opened from the middle like a mechanism. It was like a flower had bloomed. After that, a wine goblet carved from ancient jade slowly rose into the air. There was an amber-colored liquid within the wine goblet, and an indescribable fragrance permeated the air. It refreshed the heart, and, for a time, it caused one to feel intoxicated. Good wine, good wine. Is this the universal sun-moon wine? Shinzong was secretly puzzled. Many people were also puzzled. Of course it's not the universal sun-moon wine. It's just the good wine that Senior Wine Master let us taste. The person who knew the truth raised his eyebrows and said proudly, to put it bluntly, this wine was equivalent to an appetizer. The universal sun-moon wine, which could only be brewed in 10 years, had not appeared yet. Moreover, not everyone could get the universal sun-moon wine. There was a limited amount. In the past, there were at most 7 or 8 people who could get the universal sun-moon wine, and at least 2 or 3 people. It all depended on Wine Master. Good wine, good wine. Someone could not wait to take a sip of the wine bottle. He felt like he was on cloud 9 and could not help but shout. When the others heard that, they were also interested and picked up the wine bottle. Shinzong pinched his fingers and picked up the wine bottle. He was not in a hurry to taste it. Instead, he brought it close to his nose and sniffed it. The wine's fragrance was very strong, but it did not enter his nose directly. Instead, it turned into wisps of smoke and rose into the air. They floated into his nose and went straight to his heart and lungs. In an instant, Chun Zong felt that his whole body was soaked in an extremely comfortable feeling. He felt like he was about to fly and float. It was as if he was intoxicated and did not know where he was, but he was clear-headed and aware of everything. He took a sip and the wine flowed down his throat. A cool feeling exploded in his body and rushed to his limbs and bones. Chun Zong felt that his qi and blood were cheering. This feeling was simply too wonderful. The wine I drank before was not as good as this. Chun Zong could not help but sigh. However, Chun Zong did not think that the wine he drank before was for nothing. After all, if he had not drunk so much wine, how could he know how delicious this wine was? There was no difference if there was no comparison. Chapter 1334. At the Cosmos platform in Cosmos Garden, the 40 invited geniuses were all immersed in the wonderful taste of the wine and could not extricate themselves. After an unknown amount of time, there was still someone who finished drinking the wine in the wine bottle, and his face was filled with a satisfied expression. Soon after, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly changed and was filled with loneliness. How can I drink other wines in the future after drinking such a good wine today? As soon as he said that, the others also sighed with sorrow. Shinzong also felt the same. It was true. With such a fine wine in his mouth, if he didn't have such a fine wine to drink in the future, drinking other wines would be like drinking water. At this time, there seemed to be a gust of wind accompanied by a strong wine fragrance. A figure appeared at the corner of the Cosmos platform. The first thing that came into view was a huge gourd that looked like it was made of ancient green jade. There seemed to be wisps of smoke lingering on the gourd, like the smell of wine, going in and out of the ancient green jade gourd. On the huge ancient green jade gourd sat an old man in a plain robe. The old man's hair was scattered and he looked a little slovenly, but he did not give off a dirty feeling. The old man was holding a wine jug in his arms, and his eyes were hazy with drunkenness. It's Senior Wine Master. Junior Ju Rong greets Senior Wine Master. Junior Gua Yunlian greets Senior Wine Master. Immediately, they stood up and bowed. Okay, let's begin, Wine Master said rudely and interrupted everyone's bow. He had always been like this. I'm honored to be invited by Senior Wine Master. Now, in front of Senior Wine Master, I, Ju Rong, will make a fool of myself first. A young man leaped up and landed on the universal platform. He stood tall with a long sword hanging from his waist. His aura was imposing, and his eyes flickered with incomparably sharp light. He swept his gaze across and said, "Who wants to compete with me?" The so-called Genius Wine Tasting Conference was not that simple. Everyone was a cultivator and they were judged by their strength. Naturally, they had to compete. Otherwise, they would not be reciting poems, which was something only scholars would do. Zhu Rong stood on the Cosmos platform and waited for his opponent. In that case, I, Lin Xiong, will be your opponent. With a long howl, the wild young man leaped into the air with a powerful aura. Then, he fell like a meteor. With a boom, the universal platform shook slightly, and a ripple spread out from the feet of the wild youth, Lin Xiong. The two of them were rising geniuses, and they weren't on the dark roll. Their actions were like throwing a brick to attract jade. Brother Lin, take my sword. Zhu Rong did not speak any nonsense. When his voice sounded, the sharp sword at his waist was unsheathed. A sharp sword light shot out. It was cold and dense. It turned into a ray of flowing light and stabbed out. That sword was as cold as autumn water and as swift as lightning, piercing through the air towards Lin Xiong. Good timing. Lin Xiong laughed heartily, his long hair fluttering in the wind. With a wave of his hand, an astonishing amount of energy condensed within it. It was like rolling thunder, and there was also a mountain-like amount of energy as it blasted out with a palm strike. Both of them were middle-level half-saints. They weren't weak and had solid foundations. They weren't very old either. They could be considered as genius-level cultivators. Each of their moves was powerful. Wine Master was drinking wine as if he didn't care at all. But in fact, he had seen everything clearly. The two of them are strong. They're stronger than ordinary mid-level half-saints. However, they're not as strong as ordinary high-level half-saints, Chunzong said to himself. The two of them fighting on the universal platform could only be regarded as general level or marquee level in terms of genius level. They were not at the level of real marquee level geniuses. Even if their cultivation had reached high-level half-saints, they were much stronger than ordinary high-level half-saints. However, they couldn't be listed on the dark roll. There was still a gap. In any case, whether it was Lin Xiong's palm skill or Zhu Rong's sword skill, they were both very brilliant. The battle was fierce. The sword light was rampant, and the palm print was like a mountain. Lin Xiong's palm skill was wild and bold. His imposing manner was powerful and astonishing. Facing Zhu Rong's sword skill, he fought steadily and steadily without being aggressive. He wore down Zhu Rong's power little by little. Zhu Rong's sword skill was swift and fierce like lightning. The speed of the sword was astonishing and the power was tyrannical. However, Lin Xiong's palms kept resisting and couldn't hurt Zhu Rong at all. Unknowingly, Zhu Rong's power was constantly being consumed. However, it was still difficult to break Lin Xiong's defense. After a quarter of an hour, Zhu Rong's sword paused slightly. Lin Xiong's eyes emitted a terrifying light. A tyrannical aura suddenly rolled out. It was as if a mountain had collapsed. Under this palm, it was as if a mountain had collapsed. Zhu Rong's expression suddenly changed. He quickly retreated. At the same time, he wielded his sword as if it was flying. However, Lin Xiong's palm blasted it away. Lin Xiong's other palm quietly stretched out. When it was close to Zhu Rong, the palm energy suddenly spurted out and an extremely terrifying power blasted out. This palm immediately made people's eyes brighten. It turned out that Lin Xiong not only had a powerful attack, but also a delicate attack, which made it harder for people to guard against. This palm blasted Zhu Rong back and also disintegrated Zhu Rong's power in an instant. Lin Xiong's attacks were continuous. His palms were like mountains and fluttering like butterflies. Boom, 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 under the continuous attacks, and after losing the initiative, Zhu Rong was constantly pushed back and his face turned pale. Thank you for letting me win. Lin Xiong stopped attacking and cupped his hands in respect. Thank you for letting me win. Zhu Rong also knew that after losing the initiative, he was at a disadvantage. If Lin Xiong didn't stop and continued attacking, it would be difficult for him to find a chance to counterattack. A momentary loss was nothing. Zhu Rong quickly adjusted his state of mind and sat quietly on the universe roulette. He recalled the battle just now and looked for his shortcomings to improve so that he wouldn't make the same mistake in the next battle. At the same time, he was waiting for the next battle. Since he was here and wanted to get the universe Sun Moon wine, he had to show off his ability and let Wine Sage see his ability. Only then could he have a chance to get it. Otherwise, he would be completely reduced to a spectator. Therefore, after the battle between Zhu Rong and Lin Xiong, there were immediately people who leaped onto the universe stage to fight again. Among the 40 people who were invited, not many were on the underworld ranking. There were only 9 of them. 4 of them were previously on the underworld ranking. The remaining 27 were more famous among the younger generation. They were the rising stars, and some of them even had the potential to be listed on the underworld ranking. Of course, it was only potential. Whether they could be listed on the underworld ranking was still unknown. After all, potential wasn't equal to strength. It was just a possibility. Battle after battle. In front of Wine Sage, everyone showed their true ability. However, they wouldn't deliberately hurt each other. Basically, they would stop when the battle was over. Wine Sage was very smart. He could naturally tell whether someone was good or bad. Another battle ended. Basically, everyone would only fight one battle. Or rather, they would only fight one battle and then wait and see. This battle wasn't just about brute force. Some strategy was needed. I'm Zhao Yuan. The arrogant young man leaped and landed on the universe stage. He glanced around and immediately pointed at Shenzong. Primeval Chaos Sword, Shenzong. I heard that your sword defense is extremely strong. Even Lin Hemming couldn't break through it. Coincidentally, my saber can break through anything. Come up and let me see if your sword can block my saber or if my saber can break your sword. Shenzong was speechless. Primeval Chaos Sword. He didn't say anything when he was called that. Many titles were given by others. The titles given were usually related to one's ability. When he fought with Lin Hemming, he displayed the Unbreakable Sword Circle and Primeval Chaos Sword. That was how he got the title. Shenzong didn't care too much about it. He had more titles. For example, he had the Crisscrossing Sword, Intense Sword, and so on. Now that he had the Primeval Chaos Sword, it was nothing. The Primeval Chaos Sword wasn't a bad name. If it was, Shenzong wouldn't accept it. After being called out and provoked, and in such an occasion, it was impossible for him not to make a move. Since that was the case, he might as well make a move and show Wine Master his ability. He wanted to see if he could get the universe Sun Moon wine. Shenzong got up and took a step forward. His figure flashed and appeared on the universe stage. Shenzong was ranked 105th on the dark list. He replaced Lin Hemming and was a new talent. Everyone was curious about him. Although there was some information about Shenzong's background, it was too simple. His ability was only limited to a battle with Lin Hemming. Now, they could see it with their own eyes. On a universe wheel, a purple-robed youth with long and narrow eyes had a face full of disdain. On the other hand, Li Xiaolang, who was wearing a black robe and had a cold expression, stared at Shenzong with a trace of fierce killing intent in his eyes. Shenzong was the culprit behind the failure of the Heavenly Wolf Sex operation. He had killed many of the Heavenly Wolf Sex people and caused the Heavenly Wolf Sect to suffer great losses. He had to take revenge. Now, he wanted to see how strong this person was. Zhao Yuan's cultivation was actually not very high. He was only a middle-level half-saint, which was the same cultivation as Shenzong's disguise. Wine Master just glanced at Shenzong and Zhao Yuan and continued to drink. He was still drunk. Take this. Zhao Yuan sneered and suddenly shouted. Immediately, he unsheathed the long saber at his waist. A bright saber light slashed down like a landslide. Its power was extremely shocking. It was as terrifying as a thunderbolt. The power displayed by this saber was even stronger than Lin Xiong's. It's about the strength of an ordinary high-level half-saint, Shenzong said to himself. It seemed that Zhao Yuan was a genius at the marquee level. No wonder he was so confident. However, he was only a high-level half-saint and wanted to provoke Shenzong. He really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Zhao Yuan had not seen the battle between Shenzong and Lin Hemming. Otherwise, he would not have provoked Shenzong so arrogantly. This saber slashed down like a thunderbolt. It seemed that it was going to split Shenzong in half. Zhao Yuan's merciless saber made Chunzong's face turn cold. A trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. Chunzong unsheathed the heavy dragon sword. The dark sword light tore through the sky and instantly shattered Zhao Yuan's bright saber light. At the moment when the saber and the sword collided, an extremely terrifying power burst out from the heavy dragon sword. The power was fierce and unstoppable. It was incomparably brutal, like a mountain torrent. It directly repelled Zhao Yuan. "Why didn't you defend?" Zhao Yuan was repelled and shouted. He was somewhat unprepared. What responded to him was a dark sword light. Chapter 1335. The heavy dragon sword weighed 98,000 kilograms, and its power was unparalleled, like a falling meteor. Zhao Yuan's long saber was instantly shattered, and the pitch-black sword light directly bombarded his body, breaking through layers of defense and directly hitting the heart protection mirror. The cracking sound was extremely ear-piercing, and Zhao Yuan's complexion changed greatly. The heart protection mirror seemed to be broken. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The abundant and irresistible force was vigorous, heavy, and overbearing. Zhao Yuan felt that he was as weak as a child in front of this blow. He was instantly pushed back dozens of meters, and his blood and qi were surging. His heart seemed to have been shattered, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and his breath was weak. This kind of result was shocking. Why didn't you defend?" The pale-faced Zhao Yuan screamed and questioned Chunzong. Hearing this, Chunzong smiled slightly and did not respond to Zhao Yuan, because he did not want to respond, was too lazy to respond, and disdained to respond. Hey, although the most powerful defensive sword technique is known as the unbreakable chaotic elements, it requires the opponent to have enough strength to use it. If the opponent is too weak, 1 or 2 moves can defeat him. Why defend? Suddenly, someone sneered. People who were too arrogant would not be welcomed. Hearing this sneer, Zhao Yuan's pale face turned green, then red, and then white again. Finally, he spat out a mouthful of blood again, and his whole person seemed to be bombarded by an invisible force. He staggered back a few steps, out of breath, and almost fainted. The sneer and words were even more powerful than Chunzong's sword. They shattered Zhao Yuan's inner pride and exposed his ignorance and shallowness. Yes, he could not even withstand 1 move from the opponent. What qualifications did he have to make the opponent use a defensive sword technique? Zhao Yuan was in a daze, as if he had become a walking corpse. Chunzong's sword and the sneer just now had directly shattered his self-confidence and pride. He was so fragile. Lin Xiong hurriedly stepped forward and dragged Zhao Yuan back to the universe roulette. The worst situation had happened. Now, it was up to Zhao Yuan to see if he could walk out of this trauma. If he could, then his temperament would improve, and so would all aspects of him, and his future achievements would be higher. If he couldn't walk out, he would basically be crippled. However, this had nothing to do with Chunzong. If Zhao Yuan had not been so arrogant to provoke him, such a thing would not have happened. Speaking of which, this Zhao Yuan had nothing to do with him, nor did he have any grudges against him. He just wanted to use him as a stepping stone. Since that was the case, he had to bear the corresponding consequences and price. Other than Lin Xiong and the heroic-looking female cultivator, no one cared about Zhao Yuan. Just now, you defeated him with only 1 strike. You didn't enjoy yourself enough, did you? Suddenly, a cold voice rang out, and a terrifying cold light locked onto Chunzong. "I'll be your opponent." Then, without waiting for Chunzong to agree or refuse, a figure flew out of thin air and arrived like a biting cold wind. In an instant, a black-robed figure appeared on the Qianquan platform, facing Chunzong, who was about to return to the Qianquan roulette. He is Evil Wolf Blade Li Xiaolang. The Evil Wolf Blade is ranked 93rd on the Netherworld ranking, while the Primordial Chaos Sword is only ranked 105th. I don't know. Maybe they have a grudge. His guess was right. The two of them did have a grudge. To be precise, Li Xiaolang had a grudge against Chunzong, which was why he did this. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, it would be the lower-ranked one challenging the higher-ranked one. The higher-ranked one taking the initiative to challenge the lower-ranked one seemed to be lowering his status. Li Xiaolang's body leaned forward, and his eyes were ferocious. He suddenly rushed out like a ferocious wolf, crazily rushing towards Chunzong. His shocking killing intent surged like a tide, wanting to drown Chunzong. Li Xiaolang's speed was extremely fast. The moment he approached Chunzong, a pitch-black saber light broke through the air with a hellish roar of death, as if it could split heaven and earth in half. This saber was accompanied by a sharp and mournful whimper, like the roar of a wolf in the cold wind. It directly attacked one's mind, making one unable to stay awake and affecting one's strength. However, this did not affect Chunzong much. However, the power contained in Li Xiaolang's saber made Chunzong's expression turn solemn. Although they both used sabers, the gap between Zhao Yuan and Li Xiaolang was huge. If Zhao Yuan's saber was compared to a snake, then Li Xiaolang's saber was like a dragon. This gap was fundamental. The power of this saber was even stronger than Lin Hemming's. The 93rd, ranked on the Netherworld ranking, was indeed very terrifying. Li Xiaolang's saber was not only powerful, but also astonishingly fast. It was like a thunderbolt that broke through the air, and its shocking aura completely locked onto Chunzong. This saber was unavoidable. Li Xiaolang burst out with all his strength and the primordial chaos sword. In an instant, the sword light flickered and blocked the saber. It's the primordial chaos sword technique. He can block Lin Hemming's attack, but he may not be able to block Li Xiaolang's attack. Li Xiaolang's strength is stronger than Lin Hemming's. Lin Hemming was a little surprised that Chunzong blocked his saber, but the saber in his hand did not stop at all. The second saber slashed out like lightning, and the third saber slashed out before the second saber slashed out completely. One saber slash after another. The speed of the saber became faster and faster, and the power contained in it became stronger and stronger. Chunzong's expression became more and more solemn. Heavenly Wolf howls at the moon. With a loud roar, his voice exploded, turning into a terrifying sound wave that blasted towards Chunzong. Chunzong felt as if he could hear a majestic heavenly wolf howling at the moon under the moonlight, shattering the night sky with its roar, instantly causing him to feel a sense of fear. It was as if his spiritual will would be shattered by this roar. However, Chunzong's spiritual will was extremely tough. He resisted the impact of the shocking sound wave, but the saber slashing toward him transformed into half a black heavenly wolf. Only the front half of the black heavenly wolf was visible. Its eyes were fierce and cold, and its killing intent was overflowing. Its claws were extremely sharp, as if they could tear the sky apart and leave scratches. The shocking killing intent mixed with killing intent made Chunzong's hair stand on end. Heart domain. With his mind consumed, Chunzong immediately sensed the saber slash that covered a radius of 5 meters and entered his heart domain. This saber slash was very powerful, more powerful than Lin Hemming's chiseling crane, and more complete. However, there were still some flaws in this saber slash. Following that flaw, Chunzong's movements were extremely fast. He sheathed the heavy dragon sword and held the mountain beheading sword in his hand, and a powerful force burst out. Slash. 10 saber slash. 10 consecutive saber slash. In the blink of an eye, 10 rays of sword light shot out and slashed at the flaw of the moon howling Sirius saber. The shocking momentum surged in all directions, making people feel as if their eardrums were being torn apart. Extremely dazzling light sputtered and drowned Chunzong and Li Xiaolang. Immediately, the two figures retreated. Chunzong looked dignified. He only felt the hand holding the sword tremble slightly, and the impact of the impact was neutralized. Li Xiaolang also looked dignified. He did not expect that this person could block his killing move and was not injured at all. The people around were also surprised. Lin Hemming's eyes flashed. He was very shocked. He felt that Chun Zong's strength seemed to have improved compared to the previous fight with him. Indeed, after the fight with Lin Hemming, Chun Zong had gained something. His cultivation did not improve, but his strength did improve a little. At this time, Wine Venerable changed his usual attitude. He looked solemn, and his eyes flashed. He stared at Chun Zong, as if he wanted to see through Chun Zong. When Chun Zong and Li Shilong were fighting just now, Wine Venerable actually felt Chun Zong's true cultivation, the limit of the transcendent realm. Interesting. This kid actually disguised his cultivation. Wine Venerable thought to himself with a smile on his face. It had to be said that Chun Zong's disguise was really brilliant. An ordinary peak Saint Rudiment realm expert would not be able to see through it. However, Wine Venerable was not an ordinary peak Saint Rudiment realm expert. Although he was not listed on the Profound board, his perception of aura was better than many powerhouses on the Profound board. It was just a slight difference, but Wine Master had already noticed it. As for Chun Zong's heart domain, Wine Venerable's perception was very weak. He could not see anything. But no matter what, Chun Zong had completely aroused Wine Venerable's interest. On the surface, he seemed to be an intermediate half-saint, but in fact he was at the peak of the transcendent realm. However, his strength surpassed that of an ordinary high-level half-saint. Emperor grade. He's definitely an Emperor grade genius. Wine Venerable roared in his heart. The light in his eyes seemed to be able to pierce through the sky, but he quickly hid it. However, his arm holding the wine jar trembled slightly, betraying his inner excitement. There was no Emperor grade genius in the entire mysterious Nether territory. An Emperor grade genius had amazing potential. If he grew up, he would be very terrifying. The future of an Emperor grade genius was also amazing. He had a high chance of reaching the Great Saint realm. After a while, Wine Venerable completely calmed down. However, his eyes were fixed on Chun Zong. He was very curious whether Chun Zong could fight Li Shilong head-on. After all, Chun Zong's true cultivation was only at the peak of the transcendent realm, while Li Shilong's cultivation was at the high-level half-saint realm. His strength was far superior to that of an ordinary high-level half-saint. Li Shilong's aura skyrocketed, and his eyes became even colder, flickering with a cold light. Li Shilong's aura became even more intense. The terrifying power hit the long black saber in his hand. The saber trembled slightly and let out a series of wolf howls. It was chilling. This saber was at the high-level half-saint level. When its power was fully stimulated, Li Shilong's strength became even more tyrannical. Li Shilong lowered his body slightly and pointed the tip of the long black saber forward, locking onto Chun Zong. His pupils contracted to the size of needles. In the next moment, Li Shilong's figure disappeared. He turned into a black light that tore through the sky. His long saber turned into the sharp claws of a heavenly wolf, tearing the void apart. Kill! The shocking killing intent made Chun Zong's hair stand on end. Li Shilong's strength was indeed too strong. He was even stronger than himself. Unless he used the power of the Azura doppelganger, there was no way he could defeat him. However, Chun Zong did not intend to use the power of the Azura doppelganger. Chun Zong fully activated his heart domain. Everything within a 5-meter radius was clearly perceived by him. The mountain beheading sword activated more power. Sword light overflowed, and sword chi soared into the sky. Chapter 1336. Kill, 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 kill. The shadow of a black wolf filled the air, and its claws were unstoppable. With the mountain beheading sword in hand, Chun Zong used the heavenly crystal body secret technique. His arms were filled with a thick white aura. The aura condensed like a cloud, increasing the strength of Chun Zong's arms. The mountain beheading sword was as light as a feather in his hand. Every strike was more powerful. His heart domain covered a 5-meter radius. Even the smallest speck of dust could be seen within that radius. 9 terrifying blade lights were approaching. Each of them was within Chun Zong's perception. Even so, Chun Zong still felt a great threat. It was as if his heart domain was about to be torn apart by the 9-blade lights. It was as if his body was about to be torn apart. Chunzong realized that his heart domain was not unbreakable. As long as the attack was strong enough, it could be destroyed. Of course, Li Xiaolang's attack could not break his heart domain. It was only a threat. However, he was ranked 93rd on the dark list. Could those at the top break his heart domain? Could a Saint Realm powerhouse break his heart domain? Thoughts flashed through Chunzong's mind, but he did not think too much about it. The current situation did not allow him to be distracted. Using all his strength, Chunzong operated his 9 spirit wheels to the extreme. It was as if he was going to surpass his limit. His super spiritual energy surged as he swung the mountain beheading sword. 10 blades extreme slash. 10 blades combo. Blood splattering sword. 2 saint-level sword techniques were performed consecutively in an instant to block Li Xiaolang's 9 slashes of the Heavenly Wolf. Heavenly Wolf shatters the mountain. The 9-blade lights that were blocked instantly gathered into an even more majestic and violent blade light. It transformed into a complete black Heavenly Wolf and charged forward. Chunzong's heart domain trembled as if it was about to collapse. Chunzong had a feeling that this blade was so powerful that he might not be able to block it. Did he have to use the power of the Azura clone? In fact, Chunzong was not willing to use the power of the Azura clone here. After all, Wine Sage was unfathomable. Who knew? As for the Azura clone, Chunzong kept it a secret. Chunzong, he did not want anyone to know about it. Since he could not use it, he decided not to use it for now. He took a deep breath, and in that instant, all the strength in his body was stimulated to the extreme. Under this kind of pressure, it was as if he was about to surpass his limits. The bottleneck of his qi cultivation level loosened even more. Without using the power of the Shura avatar, Chunzong planned to use Li Shilong's saber to train himself, so that he could break through the bottleneck of qi refining and advance further. It Chunzong. Chun, Chunzong. Chun, 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 killed Chun, Chun. Li. This move was like a battle to the death. Kill. Chunzong. A powerful force. Chunzong. His face changed. The mountain beheading sword almost flew out of his hand. The web between his thumb and forefinger was torn. A horrible force rushed out and destroyed everything in its way. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Every step Li took seemed to crush the universal platform. His qi and blood were about to burst out, but Chunzong stopped them. This was because if he spat out a mouthful of blood, his aura would drop. Li Shilong's figure paused, and he immediately changed to holding the saber with both hands. His eyes shone with an incomparably terrifying light. It was extremely cold, and his killing intent was unparalleled. He wanted to take this opportunity to kill Chunzong. Li. Chunzong's pupils constricted. Such a strike was stronger than the previous one. Furthermore, he was the one who had retreated. He had just used up his energy and was about to use it again. He had to use the power of the Azura clone. No killing is allowed in the Universal Garden. How dare you violate my rules? An angry roar rang out. At the same time, Li Shilong's blade, which was filled with killing intent and all his strength, was shattered. Then, an irresistible force directly bombarded Li Shilong's body. With a loud bang, Li. His body flew in the air, and he kept vomiting blood. Get out. You're not welcome in my Universal Garden. Following Wine Master's second sentence, a gust of strong wind swept up Li Shilong's injured body and threw him out of Qingquan Garden at an astonishing speed. Wine Venerable had his own rules. Moreover, Wine Venerable had an eccentric temperament and was an unusual master at the peak of the Saint Realm. Anyone who dared to violate his rules would definitely be punished. It was already very fortunate that they had not been killed directly. Even if the Heavenly Wolf sect wanted to take revenge, they couldn't. The entire Heavenly Wolf sect was not enough to kill Wine Venerable. Wine Venerable's sudden attack shocked the others. At the same time, some of them were gloating. There was a hidden rule in the sparring in the Universal Garden. One had to stop at a certain point to determine the winner or the loser. One could also injure the other party. After all, it was hard to guarantee that one's attack would be too heavy. However, killing was not allowed. Perhaps during the intense battle, Li Shilong would use some moves that were difficult to master and kill his opponent. Then, Wine Master would intervene to stop him. However, this time, it was Li Shilong who deliberately wanted to kill Qinzong. Moreover, it was Qinzong who had aroused Wine Master's interest. Wine Master would naturally be furious. He would save Qinzong, kill Li Shilong, and expel him from the Universe Garden. After that, with Li, everyone had one less strong competitor. After all, he was ranked 93rd on the Dark List. If he didn't court death like this, there was a high chance that he would be qualified to drink the Universal Sun Moon wine. But now, there was no hope left. Outside the Universal Garden, a figure fell from the sky. He landed heavily on the ground and bounced up. He couldn't help but spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. All the bones in his body seemed to be broken. He couldn't get up for a while. He struggled to take out a medicinal pill and consumed it. Only after the medicinal pill's power had dissolved did he stand up. Li Shilong's face was as pale as a ghost, and he was in an incomparably sorry state. His eyes flickered with a shocking killing intent. It was so dense that it could not be dispersed. This killing intent was targeted at Qinzong and Wine Venerable. If Wine Venerable hadn't intervened, he would have killed Qinzong with a saber. What he didn't know was that if Wine Venerable hadn't intervened, Qinzong would have used the power of the Azuric doppelganger. At that time, it wouldn't be Li. Instead, it would be Qinzong killing Li. It was also because Venerable Wine had blocked his saber. If he knew the truth, maybe he would be grateful to Wine Venerable. In my Chinkan garden, there's a competition to see who is better, but no one is allowed to take their lives. Let me repeat it again, Wine Master said coldly. Then he waved his hand and said, "All right, you can continue." Qinzong returned to the Universal Roulette to rest. He was recuperating from the battle with Li. That battle was extremely dangerous, but it was also a good opportunity for him to hone his skills. Qinzong didn't attack again. The previous battle had shown his strength. He deserved to be listed on the Dark List. Among the remaining 39 people, the person with the highest ranking on the Dark List was 80th. He was a young man in black. His name was Zheng Tuo. Next was Nan Wukong. He was 84th on the Dark List. He wore a purple robe and had long and narrow eyes. Okay, now I announce that Zheng Tuo, Nan Wukong, Lin Xiong, and Xiaoming are qualified to drink. The rest of you can leave, Wine Venerable announced directly. The 4 people who were named were overjoyed. Those who were not qualified were disappointed. After all, the Universal Sun and Moon wine was not simple. It could enhance one's potential and was very helpful for cultivation. Qinzong was also disappointed that he couldn't taste the Universal Sun and Moon wine. However, he couldn't interfere with Wine Venerable's decision. After all, the Universal Sun and Moon wine was brewed by Wine Venerable. He had 100% autonomy. Moreover, Wine Venerable was eccentric. He always did things according to his preferences. Young friend, come to the Universal Garden tomorrow. Suddenly, Qinzong heard a voice. Qinzong was stunned. He looked at Wine Venerable and saw Wine Venerable nodding slightly. They left one after another with regrets. Only Zheng Tuo and the other 3 who were named stayed. They could taste the Universal Sun and Moon wine. After walking out of the Universal Garden, Qinzong returned to the Xianming courtyard. Wine Venerable wants me to go to the Universal Garden tomorrow. Why is that? Qinzong thought to himself. He felt that Wine Venerable had good intentions. If he had bad intentions, Wine Venerable wouldn't beat around the bush. Of course, unless Wine Venerable had hidden himself very well. In any case, since Wine Venerable invited him out of goodwill, and Qinzong didn't feel that there was anything wrong, he would go there tomorrow. After putting aside his doubts, Qinzong began to cultivate. Cultivation was like sailing against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall behind. Even if it was difficult to advance, you still had to keep cultivating. Soon, The news that Zheng Tuo and the other three were qualified to drink the universal sun and moon wine spread. The news that Li Shilong was injured and expelled by Wine Venerable also spread. Shenzong didn't care about the news. The night passed, and the next morning came. Shenzong left the Xianming Quarter and went to the Universal Garden. When he came to the gate of the Universal Garden again, it was still open and unguarded. Shenzong didn't hesitate and walked in. The Universal Garden was quiet and deep. Walking in, there was an indescribable comfort and relaxation. "Young friend, please come here." Wine Venerable's voice came to Shenzong's ears through the void. Following Wine Venerable's instructions, Shenzong soon came to a small pavilion. A figure was sitting in the pavilion. "Young friend, please take a seat." Wine Venerable smiled. "May I know why you called me here?" Shenzong asked after sitting down. "Don't worry, I mean you no harm," Wine Venerable said with a smile. "But young friend, you've hidden yourself very well." Shenzong's heart skipped a beat. In this world, what should be hidden should be hidden. The wind will blow the tree that stands out in the forest. If you don't have enough strength, you should keep some of your strength. Wine Venerable sighed with emotion. Then he stared at Shenzong and said, "I called you here for no other reason than to treat you to a drink." "Treat me to a drink?" Shenzong was a little confused. Wine Master's way of doing things was indeed confusing. Chapter 1337. The lake was the Chinquan Lake, and the pavilion was the Sun and Moon Pavilion. The sun and moon hung in the pavilion. Wine Master sat in the position of the sun, and Shenzong sat in the position of the moon. There was a Chinquan table between them. The Cosmos Sun Moon wine is brewed from the combination of 3 sacred medicines and 9 top-notch spiritual medicines in the heaven and earth spirit spring water in the Cosmos pot. It is brewed by absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon, Wine Master said, which surprised Shenzong. Such a method of brewing was indeed unusual. Shenzong couldn't help but look forward to the Chinquan sun and moon wine. Thinking about it, this wine was brewed from 3 sacred medicines and 9 top spiritual medicines with the help of the spring water of heaven and earth in the secret treasure Chinquan pot. After the essence of the sun and moon was absorbed, it was finally brewed. It contained amazing power. Outsiders only know about the Chinquan sun and moon wine, but there's something else. Wine Master smiled and said, "For example, the wine that the 4 people drank yesterday was the 10-year Chinquan sun and moon wine. Today, I'm going to treat you to the 100-year Chinquan sun and moon wine." When Shenzong heard this, his eyes immediately emitted a ray of light. Although he wasn't an alcoholic, Shenzong loved wine, so he knew a little about it. The older the wine, the better it was. There was a big difference between a 10-year wine and a 100-year wine. Not to mention the effect, there was a big difference in the taste. The higher the cultivation of a cultivator, the longer his life would be. He could even live for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. However, it was difficult for a wine to be so old. After all, once it was brewed, it would be drunk after a certain age, unless it was hidden somewhere. Shenzong had only cultivated for a limited number of years. To him, 100-year-old wine was indeed astonishing. As for a wine that was a few hundred years old, it was rare. A wine that was 1,000 years old was even rarer. The wine that he drank in the past was only a few years old. It was good if it was 10 years old. Moreover, the brewing materials and method of the Chinquan sun and moon wine were different. Wine Master didn't continue talking after he had piqued Shenzong's interest. He waved his hand, and a wine gourd appeared on the Chinquan table. The wine gourd was an ancient green jade color with wisps of smoke curling around it, making it look like a fairyland. Shenzong took a closer look and saw the picture of the Chinquan sun and moon on the gourd. It was vivid. It was like a world. Just by looking at the wine gourd, he felt it. Then 2 wine bottles flew up and landed, one in front of Shenzong and the other in front of Wine Master. Both bottles had pictures of the sun and the moon on them, which were very exquisite and mysterious. Wine Sage patted his wine gourd, and a stream of wine of an unknown color shot out like a fountain. It split into 2 and landed in 2 wine bottles. And the wine gourd wine, this fragrance seemed to be there, yet also seemed to be absent. It seemed to constantly seep into his nostrils and lungs, yet it also seemed to spread in every direction. His entire body felt comfortable, as if he was floating in the air. Previously, it was because he had drunk fine wine that he felt this way. But now, he felt this way just by smelling the fragrance of the wine. Zone! Good wine must be savored carefully to bring out its charm. Wine Master Wine raised his wine gourd. Shenzong did the same. He sniffed it. The wine fragrance was so strong that it could not be dispersed. It was like a storm in waves. It was like the clouds floating in the boundless sky. Shenzong took a sip, and the intoxicating wine immediately exploded in his mouth. It shook Shenzong's mind to the point where it felt like it was about to shatter. His body also felt like it was about to shatter and turn into nothingness. Everything seemed to have disappeared. Only a wisp of consciousness was left. It floated in the nothingness, not knowing how long it had been. Wine Master Wine finished the wine gourd in one gulp and looked at Shenzong with a smile. The 100-year Qingquan Sun and Moon Wine was not comparable to the 10-year Qingquan Sun and Moon Wine. Although it was not 10 times more effective, it was still several times more effective. Those who drank it for the first time would inevitably be immersed in an unknown state. Even those who had reached the saint realm would inevitably be affected, let alone Shenzong, whose cultivation was not yet at the saint realm. This sip will last for at least a day, Wine Master Wine secretly smiled. Immediately, Wine Master Wine showed a look of surprise because Shenzong woke up and his eyes were clear again. How is this possible? Shenzong was just a peak transcendent realm cultivator. As the winemaker, Wine Master Wine knew very well about the 100-year Qingquan Sun and Moon Wine. Even if he was an emperor-grade genius with a stronger soul than ordinary cultivators, he was just a half-saint. It would be good if he could reach the first heaven saint realm at best. A low-level saint realm cultivator would be intoxicated for at least half a day after drinking the 100-year Qingquan Sun and Moon Wine. How could he wake up in just a few breaths? It was hard to imagine. Good wine. Shenzong could not help but praise. He felt that the wine had spread throughout his body and sublimated his essence, qi, and spirit. It was as if he had unloaded a heavy burden and became relaxed. This kind of relaxation was not only reflected in his limbs, but also in his entire body. It even went beyond the shackles of his body and reached his soul. His whole body was relaxed, and his essence, qi, and spirit were sublimated. It was an indescribable change, as if he had broken through some kind of shackles. However, it was not obvious enough. Shenzong's eyes emitted a blazing light as he stared at the wine jug before him, staring at the wine inside. He could not tell what color the wine was. It seemed transparent, but also colorful. It was constantly changing mysteriously. Upon closer inspection, it seemed as if the universe was rotating. The sun rose and the moon set. The sun and the moon alternated, and then the sun and the moon appeared at the same time. Shenzong had a feeling that he would undergo a comprehensive transformation if he drank all the wine in the wine bottle. He picked up the wine bottle and drank at least 3 liters of wine in one gulp. In an instant, Shenzong felt like he was about to explode. His body exploded, his mind exploded, and his soul exploded. Everything exploded. A dark void appeared. Then, light appeared, as if the first ray of divine light at the beginning of the world shone in all directions. The universe was in chaos, the creation of heaven and earth, the rotation of the universe, the sun and the moon appeared at the same time. Then, the sun and the moon shone together. Wine Master stared at Shenzong. Just now, he had judged that Shenzong would only wake up after being drunk for a day. However, Shenzong woke up after being drunk for only a few dozen breaths. It was very strange. This time, Wine Master made the same judgment in his heart. According to his estimation, Shenzong would need at least 10 days to wake up. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 100 breaths had passed. Shenzong was still drunk. In the blink of an eye, another 100 breaths had passed. Shenzong was still drunk. This time around, my judgment should be correct. Wine Sage quietly laughed. Soon after, His eyes widened and were filled with disbelief. Chinzong woke up. Shocking. Extremely shocking. There were only two reasons for waking up in such a short time. One was that the universal sun and moon wine had lost its effect, and the other was that his soul was very powerful. The former was impossible, and the latter seemed unlikely. To wake up in such a short time, his soul had to be at least at the Mastery Saint rudiment stage. After thinking about it, Wine Master overruled the two possibilities. He felt that the young man in front of him was very mysterious. He could not believe that his soul had reached the Mastery Saint rudiment stage. However, as a genius, even an emperor-grade genius, it was normal for him to be mysterious. Wine Master did not think too much about it. Although Chinzong had woken up, he felt different. It was as if he had been reborn. It was as if the world had been cleansed and became clearer. He felt that his essence, energy, and spirit did not improve at all. However, it seemed to have undergone some kind of change, and his essence had been improved. This feeling, for a moment, Chinzong could not describe what he was feeling. He only felt very comfortable. His whole body was relaxed, and the improvement of his essence, energy, and spirit was more obvious. This was a transformation in essence, and it would be more helpful for his future cultivation. At the same time, Chinzong also felt that he could no longer drink the 100-year Cosmos Sun Moon wine, at least not for a short period of time. He was full. His body felt full. If he continued to drink, not only would it not do him any good, but it would also put a heavy burden on his body. "Thank you, Senior." Chinzong got up and bowed to Wine Master gratefully. Chinzong did not know how the 10-year Universal Sun and Moon wine was like because he had never tasted it. However, the 100-year Universal Sun and Moon wine was definitely better than the 10-year one. Chinzong felt that the benefits he had gained were not limited to what he felt now. There were more benefits, but they had not been shown yet. No matter what, he was not fated to drink the Universal Sun and Moon wine. However, Wine Master favored him and gave him a chance. The 100-year Universal Sun and Moon wine was not something that others could compare with. Of course, Chinzong was not a greenhorn. Wine Master favored him because he thought highly of him. However, no matter what, he was indebted to Wine Master. In this case, Chinzong decided that if he had the chance and the ability in the future, he would definitely repay Wine Master. You can't drink the 100-year-old Inkuan Sun and Moon wine anymore. However, I still have some 10-year-old Inkuan Sun and Moon wine. I'll give it to you for your daily consumption, Wine Master said with a smile. He waved his hand, and a wine gourd appeared on the table. The wine gourd looked like a miniature version of the Universal Sun and Moon wine pot. It was about half the size of a palm. It was quaint and had a unique charm. "Thank you, Senior." Chinzong did not stand on ceremony. After drinking such a fine wine, any other wine would probably be tasteless. Although the wine gourd did not look big and could only hold about 1 or 2 kilograms of wine, it was enough for him to slowly satisfy his craving. Wine Master seemed to know what Chinzong was thinking, but he did not point it out. "Is there anything I can do for you, Senior?" Chinzong still tried to ask. Although his cultivation was not high and his strength was not strong, what if there was? "There is something I can use you for." Wine Master did not beat around the bush. "Please go ahead." Chinzong straightened his body. "I have an old rival," Wine Master said. "A few years ago, he took in a good disciple. So this time, I would like to ask for your help. Pretend to be my disciple and compete with the disciple of my old rival." Chapter 1338. Other than Chinzong and Wine Venerable, no one else knew that Chinzong had gained great benefits. After bidding farewell to Wine Venerable, Chinzong left the Universe Garden and returned to the Xianming courtyard with the 10-year-old Universal Sun and Moon wine that Venerable Wine had given him. His body felt light, his whole body felt comfortable, and his essence, energy, and spirit were sublimated. The benefits that the 100-year-old Universal Sun and Moon wine had brought him were constantly reflected. After returning to the 105th Xianming courtyard, Chinzong sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate as if he'd been blessed by good fortune. The 8th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping art was fully activated, and the 9 spirit wheels rotated faster and faster. The pure and majestic ultra-spiritual energy swept through his body. 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 3 cycles. After 9 cycles, the Taiyuan cloud scraping art naturally ushered in a breakthrough, and the circulation route became more complex and mysterious. The 9th level. Originally, after the battle with Lin Hemming, the bottleneck of his qi cultivation had been loosened. After the battle with Li Xiaolang, the bottleneck loosened even more, but it would take a lot of time to truly break through. But this time, after drinking the 100-year-old universal sun and moon wine, the bottleneck was completely broken and the shackles disappeared. At least, it saved him a few months of time. Dispelling all distracting thoughts, Chunzong circulated the 9th level of the Great Abyss Cloud scraping art with all his might. The speed of the 9 spiritual wheel circulation exceeded its original limit and became even faster. His super spiritual energy became even more majestic and pure, and its power continued to increase. His strength was increasing. After an hour, the powerful aura surrounding Chunzong gradually converged, and the 9 spirit wheels that rotated at high speed gradually slowed down, and the aura stabilized. Immediately, Chunzong opened his eyes, and an extremely sharp light shot out, as if piercing the sky, and let out a buzzing sound. He opened his mouth and exhaled gently, and the aura pierced through the air like a sharp sword, piercing through everything. The 9th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping art had been completely cultivated, and his qi cultivation was even more powerful. Feeling the ultra-spiritual energy in his body, Chunzong smiled. The 9th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping art. My qi cultivation has reached the real limit, Chunzong said secretly, although there were still many layers to the Great Abyss Cloud shattering art. The 9th layer was the limit he could reach in the transcendent realm. As a saint-grade high-rank secret art, some geniuses were only able to cultivate it to the 3rd stage while still in the transcendent realm. Reaching the 4th stage was extremely difficult, yet Chunzong was able to break this limit time and time again to cultivate to the 9th stage, surpassing many geniuses. However, the breakthrough was not over yet. Chunzong could feel his qi and blood surging like tidal waves, crashing into every part of his body. The inferno aura spread out behind him. It was as if a new power had been injected into it. It gradually solidified, and the pressure it released was even more shocking. The temperature in the surroundings rose sharply, as if it wanted to burn down everything. Wisps of aura continued to spread out from his body, causing his vital energy and blood to become even more vigorous and pure. His dragon power also increased as a result, nourishing his physique. Qi and blood were the foundation, and dragon power was the branches. The aura of the Inferno prison was solid, suppressing and burning in all directions. However, the aura continued to spread out from Chunzong's body. Soon after, the center of the seemingly solid Inferno prison gradually protruded upwards, and a black and red mountain appeared. Blazing Mountain Aura. Blazing Mountain Aura. The two auras had reached the grand accomplishment stage. They appeared at the same time and gradually merged. It meant that Chunzong's Blazing Mountain Inferno art was about to reach perfection. Although it was only a saint-grade low-rank secret art, it was still very terrifying if it was cultivated to perfection. After all, saint-grade secret arts were cultivated by saint realm masters. It was very difficult for transcendent realm or even half-saint realm masters to cultivate it to perfection. It was almost impossible. Chunzong was able to cultivate it to perfection. In addition to his own hard work and ability, it was also thanks to the 100-year Universal Sun Moon Wine. The materials used to brew the Universal Sun Moon Wine were extraordinary, and the brewing method was very advanced. It had absorbed the essence of the sun and moon for 100 years, and the power contained in it was incomparably pure and vigorous. It was not violent, but like a spring breeze drizzle, it permeated the body and underwent a fundamental change. Boom! The aura soared into the sky, burning mountains, and boiling seas. The entire Xianming courtyard was enveloped in a terrifyingly high temperature, as if everything was about to be burned to ashes. This extremely hot and violent power was sealed within the Xianming courtyard's protective power. It did not leak out at all, so it did not cause any alarm. Behind Chunzong, a huge black-red mountain constantly spewed out black-red magma. The magma was extremely terrifying. After the magma spewed out, it slowly flowed down from the black-red mountain like an endless tide, spreading in all directions. The raging flames burned fiercely, turning into a sea of fire. Within Chunzong's body, there was an extremely violent energy that constantly emitted rumbling sounds that shook the heavens and the earth. It lasted for more than half a day before the incomparably tyrannical power gradually converged. The blazing mountain aura converged into his body. Chunzong's body seemed to burst forth with an incomparably terrifying might in an instant, as if he had merged with a volcano. Strong, indescribably strong. Chunzong felt that at this moment, he could blow up a mountain and shatter space with a single punch. Of course, this was just an illusion. It was an illusion after his strength had been greatly enhanced. It also showed how powerful Chunzong was at this time. All of his power and aura were completely converged. Chunzong opened his mouth and spat out a breath. The breath danced wildly like a flame dragon, as if it could shatter everything. Feeling the tyrannical power surging endlessly in his body, the corners of Chunzong's mouth curled up into a smile. Finally, whether it was qi refining or body tempering, he had reached the true peak of the transcendent realm. He had cast a perfect foundation for the transcendent realm. Of course, perfection was only relative. This was already the limit of Chunzong's potential. It's time to break through, Chunzong thought to himself, an extremely sharp light flashing in his eyes with a hint of excitement. His cultivation had been stuck at the transcendent realm. Although he had the strength of a half-step saint, his cultivation had not reached the true half-step saint realm. Limited by his cultivation, it was difficult for his strength to improve by much. At this moment, relying on the ninth stage of the Great Abyss Cloud Searing Art, Chunzong felt that his strength might be able to compete with Li Xiaolang, but whether he could defeat Li Xiaolang was unknown, unless he used the power of the Azura clone. However, after he broke through to the half-step saint realm, his strength would increase again. At that time, defeating Li Xiaolang would not be a problem. However, Chunzong was not sure how much his strength would increase after he broke through to the half-step saint realm. Exhaling a long breath, Chunzong's expression became solemn. He removed all distracting thoughts and began to break through. The breakthrough from the transcendent realm to the half-step saint realm was actually not that complicated. It was a transformation of the nature of one's strength. In other words, spirit energy or ultra-spirit energy transformed in a half-step saint force. Half-step saint force was a kind of power between spirit energy and saint force. It was purer and more powerful than spirit energy, but not as powerful as saint force. However, Chunzong's ultra-spirit energy was pure and tyrannical, comparable to many half-step saint forces. Therefore, whether it would become even more powerful after transforming into half-step saint force was unknown. After all, any strength had an upper limit. Let's begin. Chunzong circulated his secret art with all his strength. The 9 spirit wheels spun crazily, faster and faster. Gradually, they reached their limit, and then began to break through it bit by bit. The spinning speed that surpassed the limit compressed the ultra-spirit energy bit by bit, causing it to transform. Time slowly passed as a large amount of heaven and earth essence energy surged in from all directions. It poured into Chunzong's body and was continuously absorbed by the 9 spirit wheels. The wind rose and the clouds surged. The wind howled as it swept through the 105th Xianming courtyard. The world energy in the Xianming courtyard was constantly being absorbed, and the outside world was constantly being replenished. Chunzong's ultra-spirit energy was transforming bit by bit. Chunzong's foundation was incomparably strong and solid. It was amazing. He could have broken through long ago, but he had been suppressing it until he reached his true limit. It was only now that he began to break through. This breakthrough was not difficult, but it was not easy either. It was not difficult because the breakthrough was fast. There were no shackles on the transformation of Ultra Spirit energy into half-saint energy. However, it was not easy because the transformation speed was very slow. It was like grinding water, transforming bit by bit. If it was a normal spiritual energy, the transformation speed would be very fast. However, Chunzong's Ultra Spirit energy was too pure and tyrannical. It was more difficult to transform. It was just like how it was easy to crush wood, but it was even more difficult to crush steel that had been tempered 100 times. Time passed bit by bit. More than half a day had passed, but only a small part of Chunzong's enormous Ultra Spirit energy had transformed into half-saint energy. The transformed half-saint energy made Chunzong somewhat disappointed. It was indeed more powerful than Ultra Spirit energy, but not by much. It should be about the level of Ultra Spirit energy cultivated from the 10th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping technique. Disappointment was disappointment, but overall, there was still an improvement. His strength would also become more powerful. Moreover, this was only the level of a low-level half-saint. There were still mid-level and high-level half-saints above it. No matter what, a breakthrough was always good. After all, this was only the power of the 9th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping technique. He wholeheartedly broke through, and his Ultra Spirit energy continued to transform. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. A tyrannical aura suddenly rushed out from Chunzong's body, as if it was surging in all directions and shattering everything. It was extremely tyrannical, with a kind of boundless and deep fluctuation. His chi cultivation had completely broken through, and he was now a low-level half-saint. Chunzong opened his eyes, and they shone brightly. Feeling the increasingly powerful power in his body, Chunzong revealed a smile. He was now a low-level half-saint, but his strength was much stronger than before. If he fought with Lin Hemming again, he might be able to easily defeat him. If he fought with Li Shilong again, he would not be at a disadvantage like before. He might even be able to suppress his opponent. This was one of the reasons. Another reason was that the cultivation breakthrough had also broken the current limit. The Taiyuan cloud scraping technique could continue to be cultivated to a higher level. The 10th level, the 11th level, or even higher level meant that his potential would be developed and enhanced. Next, I'll start a breakthrough my body refining technique, Chunzong said to himself. His body refining technique had also reached the limit of the dragon power realm. Now that his chi cultivation had broken through to a low-level half-saint, his body refining technique could also break through to the half-saint level. In this way, Chunzong's life-saving ability would be even stronger. Chapter 1339. In the 93rd Xianming courtyard of the Xianming district, a tyrannical aura suddenly soared into the sky, accompanied by a terrifying howl of a wolf. It was as if the wind whistled through the valley, emitting astonishing sharpness and murderous intent. In the next moment, the tyrannical aura and murderous intent receded like a tide, instantly converging. A figure also appeared in the courtyard. He was dressed in a black robe, and his eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. It was Li Xiaolang. After being injured by Wine Master and thrown out of the Universe Garden, Li Shilong had suffered heavy injuries. After returning to the Xianming courtyard, he had gone into seclusion to recuperate until now. Fortunately, Wine Master had not been heavy-handed. Otherwise, his injuries would not have been so simple. He might have even been killed. Even if Li Xiaolang was killed by Wine Venerable, the Heavenly Wolf sect could do nothing about it. They were no match for Wine Venerable, even if they used the entire sect's strength. During the recuperation period, Li Xiaolang was full of hatred for Chunzong and Wine Venerable. Even the river could not wash away his hatred. Now that he had finished recuperating and had come out of seclusion, the murderous intent in his heart grew wildly. Wine Venerable was too strong. He was at the peak of the Saint Rudiment realm. He was no match for him. Even the top master of the Heavenly Wolf sect was no match for him. He could only suppress his hatred for the time being and wait for an opportunity in the future or when he was strong enough to take revenge. As for now, he had to kill Qinzong first. He had a chance in the Universe Garden, but unfortunately, it was interrupted by Wine Venerable. He had to find an opportunity as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult to kill Qinzong when he reached the high level of the Half-Saint. In terms of body refining cultivation, the Dragon Force realm was equivalent to the Transcendent realm, and the Chaotic Heaven realm was equivalent to the Saint Rudiment realm. Therefore, the strength of the Chaotic Heaven realm was also called the Chaotic Heaven Force, and the Half-Saint body refining realm was called the Half-Chaotic Heaven realm, and the strength was called Half-Chaotic Heaven Force. At this moment, Qinzong's Qi refining realm was at the low level of the Half-Saint realm, and his body refining realm was at the low level of the Half-Chaotic Heaven realm. Their levels were the same, but their strengths were not. Half-Chaotic Heaven Force in body refining realm was stronger than Half-Saint realm in Qi refining realm. The Blazing Mountain Inferno art was a Saint-class low-grade art, while the Great Abyss Cloud-Shattering art was a Saint-class high-grade art. However, Qinzong's Taiyuan Cloud-Shattering skill had reached the 9th level, while his Burning Mountain Inferno skill had reached the Consummate realm. Therefore, there was a difference in the strength of their powers. Qinzong's body refining power was higher than his Qi refining power. Of course, in terms of strength, his body refining power was not as good as his Qi refining power. After all, the level of one's strength was not only determined by one's cultivation, but also by one's martial arts. Qinzong's body refining martial arts was only the lower class of the sacred level, which was not as good as the Qi refining martial arts. Of course, there was not much difference between Qi refinement and body refinement. They were almost equal. Like a whale sucking in water, he sucked in all the air and Qi of heaven and earth in the courtyard. As he exhaled, the energy was like a dragon, but it was also like a storm. The entire Xianming courtyard was shaking as if it was being ravaged by a storm. The powerful body refining cultivation brought about a terrifying physique, and the powerful physique also caused Qinzong's bodily functions to increase exponentially. Even his breathing became extremely shocking. Qinzong could not help but wonder if a great chaotic heaven realm expert could destroy a mountain with a single breath. He drew his sword, and a bloody light flashed. It instantly tore through the air as fast as lightning, leaving a bloody scar in the sky that did not dissipate for a long time. The blood-red sword light directly attacked the edge of the courtyard, and it rippled out when it struck the defensive power of the Xianming courtyard. Blood-splattering sword. Compared to before his breakthrough, the speed of this sword strike was much faster, and its power was much stronger. Overall, it had improved quite a bit. No matter how pure the supreme spiritual energy was, even if it was stronger than Half-Saint energy, it was still at the level of spiritual energy. Half-Saint energy was different. It had already surpassed the level of spiritual energy and was approaching Saint energy. As for Saint-level martial arts, it was undoubtedly the most suitable to use Saint energy. Although Half-Saint energy was not Saint energy, it was closer to Saint energy and more suitable to use Saint-level martial arts. The blood-splattering sword executed with Half-Saint energy had a very significant increase in power. Qinzong silently estimated that his current cultivation was at the low-level Half-Saint realm, and his Half-Saint energy was also at the low level. Its strength was roughly equivalent to the supreme spiritual energy that he had when he cultivated the Taiyuan cloud scraping technique to the 10th level before his breakthrough. However, the blood-splattering sword executed with this level of Half-Saint energy was more powerful than the blood-splattering sword executed with the supreme spiritual energy of the 10th level of the Taiyuan cloud scraping technique. There was at least a 30% difference. The difference of 30% was very obvious. This meant that Qinzong's Qi refining strength would be more powerful than previously expected. Sword training. Qinzong was adapting to his new power. Although his control of his own power had reached an astonishing level, it was still a new power after all. He had to adapt as much as possible and strive to master it more thoroughly. At the very least, he could clearly know how much power could be unleashed when combined with martial arts. After practicing the sword technique, Chunzong also practiced the Burning Mountain Hellfire Hand. He had mastered both the Burning Mountain Hellfire Hand and the Hellfire Finger. The Burning Mountain Hellfire Hand was a combination of the two. Chunzong also discovered that when his cultivation had broken through to the low-level half-saint realm, another advantage had emerged, and that was the advantage of his soul. The strength of his soul had reached the late stage of the soul-gathering sea realm, which was equivalent to the level of a powerful Saint Realm Master. However, his cultivation was very low, which limited the potential of his soul to a certain extent. Just like a bucket, the soul was the longest plank, and the cultivation was the shortest plank. Now that his cultivation had broken through to the half-saint realm, the shortest plank had been strengthened and extended, and naturally the water level had risen. Therefore, Chunzong was able to quickly master the Blazing Mountain Inferno Hand. It's time to settle the score with Li Xiaolang, Chunzong thought to himself. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, but a cold light flashed in his eyes. Li Xiaolang had a strong desire to kill Chunzong. He had not shown any mercy in the Qingquan Garden, and had even used a fatal strike to kill Chunzong. If Wine Master had not intervened, Chunzong would have exposed the power of the Azura doppelganger. Although Wine Master had intervened, the threat of Li Xiaolang still existed. He was a genius with powerful strength and had some backers. Chunzong did not want to be targeted by such a person. Moreover, Li Xiaolang wanted to kill him. According to Chunzong's plan, he would kill Li Xiaolang in return. Since he wanted to kill Li Xiaolang, why should he delay? Now that his strength was enough, he could make a move. He immediately left the 105th Xianming Yard and went to the 93rd Xianming Yard. When the door opened, Li Xiaolang stared at Chunzong. He was a little surprised, but at the same time his eyes were full of undisguised killing intent. Li Xiaolang, since you want to kill me, I'll give you a chance. Chunzong was not afraid of Li Xiaolang's murderous eyes. He said calmly, "Tomorrow we'll fight to the death in the arena." Upon hearing Chunzong's words, Li Xiaolang's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He then sneered and agreed. He was thinking of a way to kill Chunzong, but he did not expect Chunzong to come knocking on his door. What better opportunity could there be? Moreover, they would fight to the death in the arena. No other forces could interfere, not even Wine Master. "Young Master, I'm afraid there's something fishy going on." Li Xiaolang's guard, a 4th-level Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse, frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Under normal circumstances, it did not make sense for someone to initiate a fight to the death, even though he knew he was weaker than his opponent. Normally, he would avoid it. Maybe he thought he could barely fight me in the Cosmos Garden. Now that his strength has increased, he thinks he can deal with me." Li Xiaolang thought about it and said, "He feels threatened by me, so he wants to kill me as soon as possible so that he won't be killed by me in the future." The 4th-level Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse nodded slightly. What Li Xiaolang said made sense. However, for some reason, he had a bad feeling in his heart. "Relax, Uncle Liu. I didn't use all my strength in the Cosmos Garden." The corners of Li Xiaolang's mouth curled up into a cold smile. If Chunzong thought that this was his full strength and looked very confident in dealing with him, he would definitely regret it. Big news! Big news! Chunzong, the 105th on the Dark ranking, challenges Li Xiaolang, the 93rd on the Dark ranking, the Evil Wolf Saber. It's not just a challenge. It's a fight to the death. A fight to the death. What kind of hatred do they have for it to escalate to a fight to the death? Don't you know what happened in the Cosmos Garden? The news spread like a storm, and soon, many people knew about it. This time, it was even more intense and lively than the previous time, when Chunzong challenged Lin Hemming. After all, Chunzong was a nobody last time. This time, he was a newcomer on the Dark ranking. Moreover, the words "fight to the death" were very influential. Most of the challenges in the battle arena were to determine who was stronger and who was stronger. It was rare to see a fight to the death. As a result, It caused a huge commotion. Even many powerhouses were alarmed. A fight to the death between the prodigies on the dark ranking? Investigate. What's going on? Soon, the city governor's estate, a mysterious underworld city, took action to investigate. No matter what, the prodigies on the dark ranking were extremely important. The death of any one of them would be a great loss. It would be best if no one died. Naturally, this investigation was to see if it could be resolved. No matter how the outside world reacted, Chunzong did not care. Tomorrow was the day of the battle to the death with Li Shilong. Today, Chunzong did not relax at all. He was still cultivating and doing his best to improve himself. Tomorrow's battle would not allow any accidents. Li Shilong must be killed. Li Shilong was also cultivating. Although he did not use all his means in the Cosmos Garden that day, he did not underestimate Chunzong in the slightest. In this battle, he must kill Chunzong to get rid of future troubles. Both sides had the same idea. The moonlight was quiet, and the stars were dim. They waited until dawn. When the sky brightened and the first ray of the morning sun pierced through the sky, Chunzong of the 105th Xianming Courtyard and Li Shilong of the 93rd Xianming Courtyard opened their eyes at the same time. An incomparably sharp light shot out from their eyes, like knives and swords streaking across the sky. It's time to go. Looking at the ray of morning sun, Chunzong stood up and said to himself. His essence, qi, and spirit reached their peak in an instant, and he took a step forward. It's time to kill. Li Shilong stood up. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. His face became gloomy, as if it was filled with killing intent. The temperature around him dropped rapidly, making people afraid. Chapter 1340. The arena was bustling with people, and their auras were mixed. Li Xiaolang's murderous intent was extremely sharp. He walked over quickly like a fierce wolf, sending chills down everyone's spine. Chunzong's steps were light, like the wind and clouds. He was indescribably calm and confident. On the battle arena, Li Shilong coldly stared at Chunzong. His gaze was incomparably sharp, as if he wanted to pierce through Chunzong and tear him apart. An astonishing, killing intent filled the air, and it was extremely terrifying. Chunzong smiled, not caring about Li Xiaolang's murderous intent at all. In the sky above the arena, figures stood out of thin air, exuding shocking auras. They were all Saint Realm masters. This kind of darkless life and death battle had already aroused their interest. Wine Venerable Lord sat on a huge ancient green jade gourd, holding a wine jar. He looked drunk, but his eyes were fixed on Chunzong, as if he wanted to see through Chunzong. It's still the aura of a mid-level half-saint, Wine Venerable Lord thought. He couldn't see through Chunzong's cultivation for a while. He could see that Chunzong's real cultivation was at the limit of the transcendent realm, and not the mid-level half-saint that he was pretending to be, because Chunzong and Li Xiaolang were fighting fiercely. Under normal circumstances, he couldn't see through Chunzong's cultivation. The battle between Chunzong and Li Xiaolang hadn't started yet, so Wine Venerable Lord couldn't see through it. However, Chunzong must have gained a lot after drinking the 100-year-old Universal Sun Moon wine. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the confidence to fight a life and death battle with Li Xiaolang. Now, Wine Venerable Lord had to wait for Chunzong to pretend to be his disciple and compete with his old rival's disciple. I was thinking about how to get rid of you, but I didn't expect you to seek your own death. So, I'll grant you death. Li Xiaolang's expression became colder and colder. I'll kill you with my sword. Chunzong's answer was simple and direct, which made Li Xiaolang's expression change drastically. Anyone can talk big. Come and die. As soon as Li Shilong finished speaking, he suddenly burst forth with an astonishing speed. He was even faster than when he was in the Universe Garden. It looked like an extremely ferocious black wolf pouncing over at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black ray of light tore through the sky with astonishing sharpness and killing intent, heading straight for Chunzong. The saber cut through the sky with unparalleled momentum. The evil wolf blade displayed its sharpness. The mountain-beheading sword was unsheathed, and it instantly gave off a shocking amount of power. It was as if a massive mountain was descending, bringing with it a terrifying pressure and sharpness. Chop! The moment the sword and saber clashed, Li Shilong's expression suddenly changed. He could feel that the power contained in Chun Zong's sword was extremely tyrannical. It was much more tyrannical than when he was in the Universe Garden. Li Shilong was caught off guard. His long saber was shattered, and it almost flew out of his hand. The huge impact made Li Shilong's body stagger, and he couldn't help but lean back. When Chun Zong's Taiyuan cloud shattering technique broke through to the 9th level, the strength of Chun Zong's super spiritual power was enough to be comparable to Li Shilong's strength. After breaking through to the lower level of the semi-saint realm, it was further enhanced. To some extent, it was even a little bit better than Li Shilong's. Li Shilong was shocked. Chun Zong's strength had improved so much. He was inferior to him before, but now he was actually slightly better than him. So this is what you're relying on? Li Shilong couldn't help but roar. You're too self-righteous. As he spoke, an even more tyrannical aura fluctuation exploded from his body. The long saber glowed with an astonishing pitch-black luster, and waves of wolf howls resounded in all directions. Immediately, Li Shilong waved his saber, and, as if it was capable of sweeping away 1,000 armies, the pitch-black saber light transformed into giant black wolves one after another. Each of these giant wolves exuded an astonishing murderous intent, and each of them had the power of an ordinary high-level semi-saint. More than a dozen giant black wolves madly rushed out, as if a pack of wolves were circling around. It was a frightening sight. For a moment, Chun Zong was also surprised. Li Shilong hadn't used this move in the Universe Garden. In other words, Li Shilong was still holding back at that time. Or, in a short time, Li Shilong had improved and become even more tyrannical. Fortunately, Chun Zong's strength had improved a lot. Otherwise, he would have to expose the Azura Avatar's strength this time. Using the Azura Avatar's strength in front of so many Saint Realm Masters was difficult to guarantee that they wouldn't notice some clues which would be disadvantageous to him. But now, the strength of his main body was enough to deal with Li Shilong. The mountain beheading sword slashed out. 10 extreme slashes. 10 sword lights pierced through the air. Each sword light of the 10 extreme slashes wasn't very powerful. It couldn't be compared to an ordinary saint grade low-rank sword. However, under Chun Zong's tyrannical strength, each sword light was a great threat to an ordinary high-level half-saint. The sword light was extremely sharp. It directly beheaded the giant black wolves. With a sweep of the sword, it could cut through thousands of soldiers. Immediately, Chun Zong rushed forward. The mountain beheading sword stretched out like a crescent moon and tore through the sky. It was invincible. The mountain beheading sword weighed more than 100,000 kilograms. It was amazing. In the hands of Chun Zong, the sword's weight was completely unleashed, making it even more terrifying. Li Shilong's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly retreated. He found that in terms of strength, he couldn't compete with Chun Zong at all. After all, Chun Zong's body refining cultivation had reached a very high level. His physical strength was amazing. Even if he didn't use his body refining strength to fight, he still needed to use his physical strength to wield his sword. Slash! Li Shilong flew back, his blood boiling. Slash! 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 Chun Zong didn't use any special sword skills. He simply used his own physical strength to perform ordinary sword skills. However, each strike was extremely exquisite and flawless. This guy's sword skills are very good. He's a sword genius. This sword skill has returned to its original state. I wonder how it compares to the Absolute Sword King. It shouldn't be as good as the Absolute Sword King. The Absolute Sword King is a top-notch king-grade genius. He's a sword genius that's hard to find even in 1,000 years. The Absolute Sword King that these Saint Rudiment realm martial artists were talking about wasn't a king-rank martial artist, but a king-ranked genius. At the same time, he was also one of the top 10 super geniuses on the Netherworld board. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Li Shilong's face turned even uglier. That day in the Universal Garden, he had suppressed Chunzong. At that time, he hadn't used his full strength and had held back. However, now, he didn't hold back in his saber skills. Instead, he couldn't suppress Chunzong. Instead, he was constantly being pushed back. The power that Chunzong had unleashed was extremely terrifying. It was overbearing, powerful, and exquisite. Young Lord, the Fourth Heaven Saint Rudiment Realm martial artist, was secretly shocked. He was even more worried now. Chunzong, on the other hand, was enjoying himself. His cultivation had broken through, and his strength had increased. He had become even more powerful. However, cultivating by himself wasn't as satisfying as fighting. Every sword strike unleashed the full power of his cultivation, and it became more and more overbearing. The sword strikes were endless, and each strike could split mountains. With every strike, Li Shilong felt as if he was about to be split into pieces. He was horrified and didn't dare to take it head-on. Isn't the chaos essence sword's forte in defense? Everyone was dumbfounded. Now, Chunzong didn't use any defensive sword skills to defend against Li Shilong's attacks. Instead, he attacked with every strike, and the power of each strike was extremely overbearing. 10 shadows, 10 blades kill, 10 silhouettes appeared, and 10 streaks of sword light slashed out in succession. Li Shilong was shocked. The pitch-black saber transformed into countless saber lights that surrounded his body and protected him. This was the most direct and also the most violent method. The 10 sword lights were extremely exquisite. As they slashed, Li Shilong could feel the terrifying power passing through the saber and into his palm and arm. After 3 consecutive strikes, the web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and the saber flew out of his hand, emitting a dazzling pitch-black luster in the air. Li Shilong's figure flickered again and again, and he burst forth with an even faster speed. It was as if he had turned into a giant wolf, and he was extremely agile. With an ear-piercing clang, the saber fell into the distance and collided with the battle stage, causing countless sparks to fly. The saber has left his hand. Li Shilong is in danger. It's a battle of life and death. He's dead for sure. Everyone looked solemn. Li Shilong was known as the evil wolf saber, which meant that all his strength was in the saber. Now that his saber had been sent flying, his strength was undoubtedly greatly reduced. He was no match for Chunzong, even with the saber in his hand. Now that the saber had left his hand, he was even less of a match. He was dead for sure. However, looking at Li Shilong's expression, he did not panic at all. Instead, he revealed an unfathomable smile. "Do you think that I'm best at saber techniques?" Li Shilong suddenly sneered, as if he was asking Chunzong and the others, "You're wrong. You're all wrong. Today, I, Li Shilong, will show you what I'm best at." As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura suddenly rose from Li Shilong's body like rolling black smoke. It transformed into the shadow of a giant black wolf and landed on Li Shilong's body, as if the two had become one. A sound like the howling of the moon in an empty valley rang out. It was resounding, sharp, and distant, as if a heavenly wolf was howling at the moon. A strong wind whistled, and a black storm swept out, as if it was going to annihilate everything. Li Shilong stretched his arms forward and opened his 5 fingers. An astonishing pitch-black light spread out, and it was extremely sharp, as if it could tear everything in the world apart. Heavenly Wolf Claw. The complete Heavenly Wolf Claw was an upper sacred level martial art. As the young master of the Heavenly Wolf sect, Li Shilong could naturally cultivate the complete Heavenly Wolf Claw. As soon as the Heavenly Wolf Claw was displayed, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly spread out. Li Shilong seemed to have transformed into a black heavenly wolf, wreaking havoc. He hit it so well. This Li Shilong shouldn't be called the evil wolf saber, but the evil wolf claw. An expert could tell whether he was a real expert or not. As soon as Li Shilong displayed the heavenly wolf claw, his aura was different from the saber techniques he had displayed before. It was much more powerful. Chunzong's eyes narrowed slightly. He was also surprised by Li Shilong's concealment and means. All this time, Li Shilong had been displaying saber techniques, which was why he was called the Evil Wolf Saber. He did not expect that he was best at the Heavenly Wolf Claw. The disciples of the Heavenly Wolf sect that he had killed before seemed to be the same. Could it be that all the disciples of the Heavenly Wolf sect were like this? They hid their true means and used another method to show others. They would only show their true means when they were in real danger. In the past, those who knew about it might have been killed by Li Shilong, so the news did not spread. Today, facing the powerful Chunzong, Li Shilong could no longer hide and could only expose himself in public. Chapter 1341. A pair of pitch-black and sharp wolf claws tore through the sky. It was as if everything between heaven and earth had been torn into countless pieces. In the blink of an eye, Chunzong was surrounded by countless pitch-black claws. It was as if he was being devoured and torn apart. The power contained in the wolf claws was indeed more terrifying than the power of the saber technique. Young Master Sky Wolf Claw has improved. The 4th level Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse said to himself, such power should be enough to kill the opponent. Chunzong stared at Li Xiaolang, and a glimmer of light flickered in his eyes. He immediately saw through Li Xiaolang's claw technique. His cultivation had advanced to the half-saint realm. Not only had his strength increased, but his other aspects had also improved. The mountain beheading sword swept across the sky like an iron chain in front of Chunzong. An astonishing aura rippled out, and instantly it completely blocked Li Xiaolang's claws. Chunzong stood firmly in the arena, as if he was rooted to the ground. Countless sparks sputtered out. It's the impenetrable chaos sword technique. Suddenly, someone was excited. When Chunzong defeated Lin Hemming, what he used was the defensive sword technique of impenetrable chaos, which made Lin Hemming helpless and helpless. Now, Chunzong had used it again. Lin Hemming had mixed feelings. Li Xiaolang's body seemed to have spread out and surrounded Chunzong completely. He kept attacking. The Sky Wolf Claw was extremely sharp. Every claw could tear an ordinary high-level half-saint to pieces. However, every claw was blocked by Chunzong's sword. Chunzong did not even use his heart domain. Sky Wolf shatters. After using his ultimate move, the pitch-black wolf claws were instantly covered with a layer of brilliance. The brilliance was incomparably sharp, and its power increased explosively. It was as if it was going to shatter the void. A series of pitch-black cracks appeared, as if space had been shattered. An extremely terrifying aura filled the air. Of course, Li Xiaolang's strength was not enough to break space. However, the extremely terrifying aura that filled the air was indeed very shocking. Li Shilong's ranking on the Underworld ranking should be even higher than this. Li Shilong's ultimate move shocked everyone. Li Shilong's expression was extremely cold, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. It was as if he wanted to pierce through Chunzong's body. He used all his strength to perform the Sky Wolf Claw, wanting to tear Chunzong into pieces. Chunzong's expression was solemn. He raised all of his power, and the 9 spiritual wheels rotated at the maximum speed. All of the half-saint power surged out. 5 chi swords circle. Full power. Countless sword lights filled the surroundings like threads, mist, and smoke. Every strand contained an extremely terrifying power. They seemed light, but they seemed to be able to shatter mountains. Every time the claw landed on the sword chi that was like silk and mist, it would be blocked and not broken in the slightest. Li Shilong's expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with horror. The 4th Heaven Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse below the battle stage was also shocked. It was blocked. It actually completely blocked the ultimate move of the Sky Wolf Space Shattering Claw. You forced me to do this. Li Shilong was ruthless. He instantly took out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Suddenly, a terrifying black aura burst out and soared into the sky. Berserker pill. Chunzong furrowed his brows slightly. The last time he encountered the heavenly wolf sex disciple, he also took the berserker pill to increase his strength when he couldn't defeat him. Under the power of the berserker pill, Li Shilong's strength suddenly increased by several times. He was even more terrifying, and he faintly posed a threat to Chunzong. Kill! 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 Li Shilong became extremely violent. He attacked madly, and he swore not to give up until he tore Chunzong into pieces. Heart Domain. It completely covered a radius of 5 meters. The trajectory of Li Shilong's claw became extremely clear. With a sword in hand, all of the attacks were blocked by Chunzong. Li Shilong's strength was even more tyrannical after taking the berserker pill. Without using Heart Domain, Chunzong was not absolutely confident that he could block all of Li Shilong's attacks. The primordial chaos sword lives up to its name. Such a defense is really amazing. One by one, the Saint Realm Masters sighed. When they were half-step saints, they were far inferior to Li Shilong and Chunzong. It's very difficult to break through such a defense. Zheng Ta, who was ranked 80th on the dark list, looked dignified. Nan Wukong, who was ranked 84th on the dark list, snorted coldly. He seemed to be disdainful and displeased. After taking the berserker pill, Li Shilong's strength was not much inferior to Nan Wukong's. Even so, he could not break through Chunzong's defensive sword art. Nan Wukong estimated that it would be difficult for him to break through Chunzong's primordial chaos sword art. Previously, Nan Wukong had looked down on Chunzong. Now, he had a feeling that he would not be able to do anything to Chunzong. This change was naturally very unpleasant, but at the same time, he was also somewhat afraid of Chunzong. No matter how Li Shilong attacked, Chunzong's feet remained motionless. He completely resisted all of the attacks with the sword in his hand. Sooner or later, the power of the berserker pill would be exhausted. At that time, Li Shilong would become weak. However, Chunzong did not intend to wait until then. Block and counterattack. The extremely powerful sword was like a sword mountain pressing down from the sky. Its power was unparalleled, and it exploded in an instant. Li Shilong, who was in a berserk state, had no intention of dodging. His claws shook, and an extremely shocking aura burst out. He immediately attacked. The mountain beheading sword and the sky wolf claw collided in an instant. A terrifying force overflowed, turning into a roaring hurricane that destroyed everything. Li Shilong's arms shook, and his body could not help but lean back. The violent impact of the force also caused Chunzong's body to sway. Immediately, he bounced back like a bamboo in the wind. His speed was even faster, and his sword cut across the sky. Not only was this sword unparalleled in power, but it was also as fast as the wind. It slashed Li Shilong's body like a furious thunderbolt. Li Shilong only had time to wave his claws to block before he was knocked back. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Blood-splashing sword. Chunzong muttered to himself. A cold, killing intent shot out from his eyes. Li Shilong must die. Kill. A blood-red light flashed, and it was as if a blood-red flower bloomed in the void. The stamen spat out like a blood-red thunderbolt. It was so fast that it was indescribable. Even Nan Wukong and Zheng Ta, who were ranked high on the Netherworld ranking, narrowed their eyes. Li Shilong's hair stood on end. A chill invaded every part of his body. His eyes shone with extreme horror. He was terrified, and the feeling of death swept over him. He could not block this sword. Too fast, too strong, too fierce. Li Shilong did not want to die. He was a genius on the Netherworld ranking. He had extraordinary talent and potential. He had a bright future. In the future, he would take charge of the Heavenly Wolf sect and lead it to a higher level. How would he die here? Young Master. The Heavenly Wolf sect's fourth heaven Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse's expression changed drastically. He was extremely anxious. With a loud roar, he immediately unleashed a terrifying energy. He turned into a black streak of light and charged toward the combat ring at lightning speed. With a claw, a huge wolf claw tore through the sky and mercilessly clawed at Chunzong. Not only did he want to save Li Shilong, but he also wanted to kill Chunzong. It was killing two birds with one stone. This person was a fourth heaven Saint Rudiment stage. He suddenly attacked with all his might. His speed was too fast and too sudden. It was impossible to guard against. A terrifying killing intent swept through Chunzong's body. He felt slightly numb. Even if he summoned Chun Xiu, he would not be able to block this attack. However, with Chun Xiu's cultivation base and the power of the Frost Fiend Sword, he might be able to block it and not die. A furious roar reverberated in the air. Immediately, a terrifying green light pierced through the sky. It was extremely dazzling, and the fragrance of wine permeated the air. Wine Venerable Lord had made his move. Wine Venerable Lord paid close attention to Chunzong and attached great importance to him. If it was a fair battle, he would not interfere. However, he would not allow someone to break the rules. The strength of a peak Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse was many times stronger than a fourth Heaven Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse. The gap between the two was like heaven and earth. Moreover, Wine Venerable Lord was not an ordinary peak Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse. The huge black wolf claw paused and was instantly shattered. The green light was as sharp as a sword. It pierced through the heavenly wolf sex, fourth heaven Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse's glabella, killing him instantly. Chunzong's reaction was extremely fast. He still attacked with his sword. Blood splattered everywhere. Li Shilong could not react at all. The sword hit his neck and decapitated him. His head that was filled with horror flew high up into the air and spun endlessly in the air. Die. Primordial Chaos Sword Chunzong is so strong. What terrifying strength. Could it be that he did not use his full strength in the battle with Lin Hemming? Everyone was shocked and speculating. Otherwise, how could there be such a huge gap in strength? Nan Wukong's face was a little gloomy. The strength Chunzong displayed was enough to pose a threat to him. Zheng Tuo's face was also solemn. The ranking on the underworld board also represented the strength of one strength. However, for those who were ranked at the bottom, the difference of a few ranks was not that obvious. For example, Zheng Tuo's ranking was 4 ranks higher than Nan Wukong's. However, if he wanted to defeat Nan Wukong, he would have to go all out and put in a lot of effort. Li Shilong's terrifying heavenly wolf claw after consuming the Berserker pill was enough to make them take him seriously. Chunzong, who could defeat Li Shilong in that state, was already a big threat. After defeating and killing Li Shilong, Chunzong would replace Li Shilong's ranking on the underworld board at 93rd place. From 105th place to 93rd place in less than a month, it was shocking to see such a huge increase in ranking. It also made Chunzong's name resound in mysterious underworld city again. After killing Li Shilong, Chunzong took away his spatial ring. The fourth Heaven Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouse's spatial ring was also taken by Chunzong. He was going to give it to Wine Master. After all, Wine Master was the one who killed him. After the battle ended, the group of powerhouses left one after another. The crowd left while discussing. "Little friend, your strength has improved a lot," Wine Master said with a smile. "It's all thanks to Senior's 100-year Universal Sun and Moon Wine," Chunzong said with a bow. "After all, external help is just a supplement. If you don't have enough talent and potential, the 1,000-year Universal Sun and Moon Wine won't be of much use," Wine Master said with a smile. What Wine Master said made sense. However, it was undeniable that Chunzong's improvement was related to the Universal Sun and Moon Wine. Otherwise, he would have to cultivate for at least a few months or even a year to reach his current level. It might even take longer. Chapter 1342. The 93rd Xianming Courtyard was much bigger than the 105th Xianming Courtyard. The concentration and purity of the world energy here was also higher, which was more beneficial for cultivation. Chunzong first cultivated his qi, then his body refinement. Feeling the strength in his body growing little by little, he smiled sincerely. Now that both his chi and body refinement had broken through to the lower level of the half-saint, he no longer needed to deliberately suppress it. He could do his best to improve it. After all, Chunzong's foundation was very solid and perfect. Even if he advanced by leaps and bounds, it would not affect him. In this way, he could improve with all his might. The next level to be suppressed was the higher level of the half-saint. It would be better if he suppressed it to the limit of the transcendent realm and then broke through. For Chunzong, now was the time for his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. Time flew by, and the appointed time with Wine Sage was approaching. Chunzong's chi refinement cultivation was gradually improving, but his body refinement cultivation was progressing very slowly. Compared to his chi refinement cultivation, it was slower than a snail. A few days later, Chunzong walked out of the Xianming courtyard, ready to buy some resources for body refinement, such as pills. As the central city of the mysterious underworld territory, Xianming City was very prosperous and had everything. It could be said that if something couldn't be bought in Xianming City, it would be very difficult to buy it in other places of the mysterious underworld territory, unless it was some treasured items. The ancient Xian Tower was a famous place in the mysterious underworld city. It sold all kinds of items, especially some precious items. Even if it didn't have any, it could be explained. The ancient Xian Tower had the ability to help you get it, but the prerequisite was that you had to pay a sufficient price. I recommend body refinement pills suitable for the half-saint level. Chunzong immediately said to the person who came to greet him after arriving at the ancient profound building. He went straight to the point. Okay, distinguished guest, this way please. The receptionist of the ancient profound building had obviously undergone professional training. She had a smile on her face that made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. Her words were also soft and gentle, and it was as comfortable as the flowing water of a clear spring. The other party first brought over fragrant tea and fragrant snacks. Then he took out a silk booklet and opened it. On it was a clear and detailed introduction of medicinal pills. Guest, these 4 pills are suitable for half-saint level body refinement cultivators. Chunzong looked at it carefully. The 4 types of pills all belong to the spirit grade. Although they were at the peak of the spirit grade, there were still differences between them. One type was the lowest, one type was the highest, and the other 2 types were the same, but their emphasis was different. The highest was also the most expensive, while the lowest was the cheapest. The minimum required was 10 mortal restoration pills, while the maximum required was an earth restoration pill. To a Saint Realm Master, this was not much, but to the majority of half-Saint Realm Masters, it was a huge fortune. However, Chunzong was different. He had obtained quite a lot of spoils of war. Inside his storage ring, there were thousands of mortal restoration pills, close to 3,000 earth restoration pills, and a small number of heaven restoration pills. Give me 10 Dragon Tiger Blood Spirit pills and Dragon Tiger Blood Soul pills, Chunzong said. The Dragon Tiger Blood Spirit pill was the lowest grade of the 4 pills, while the Dragon Tiger Blood Soul pill was the highest grade. However, Chunzong wasn't sure how effective they were. Therefore, he bought 10 of each and decided which one he should buy in the future. All right, guest, please wait a moment. The attendant stood up gracefully, turned into a gust of fragrant wind, and floated out. Not long after, when the attendant returned, there was an old man. Haha, I am a steward of ancient profound tower. My surname is Lin. The primal chaos sword has graced us with his presence. The timing is just right. The old man said with a smile. Guest, these are the pills you requested. The young and beautiful female attendant placed 2 jade bottles in front of Chunzong. Hello, Steward Lin. Chunzong responded first, then asked, how many are there in total? Free. Steward Lin smiled and said, just a small greeting gift. I won't accept a reward for nothing. Chunzong was very direct. Of course not. Steward Lin was also very direct. In fact, we were just about to pay a visit to the primal chaos sword. Please speak. Chunzong's expression remained unchanged, and his tone was indifferent. Steward Lin's words were very direct, and Chunzong liked to talk like this. They talked about things when there was something, and chatted when there was nothing. The Ancient Profound building is owned by the Ancient Profound Society. Currently, we have discovered a sealed world, but there are restrictions on entry. Saints cannot enter it, but half-step saints can. Therefore, our Ancient Profound Society has gathered a group of powerful half-step saints to explore the sealed world. Steward Lin explained in a few words. Ancient Profound Society was a major force in mysterious underworld city. It had a deep foundation and extraordinary wealth. It maintained a good relationship with all parties, and even 8-star forces were not willing to be enemies with it easily. Therefore, when Ancient Profound Society discovered a secret place, under normal circumstances, those powerful 8-star forces and even 9-star forces would not intervene. As for 7-star forces, even if they wanted to intervene, they could not. There were many powerful half-saints in Ancient Profound Society, but only one of them was on the dark list. There is no doubt that among the half-saints, the one on the dark list was the most outstanding. Perhaps there were some geniuses who had the strength of the dark list, but were not on it for some reason. After all, there were very few. The dark list was not an empty name. Only those who were strong enough were qualified to be on it. It cannot be faked. The secret place seemed to be quite dangerous because Ancient Profound Society had sent a group of powerful half-saints in, but they had lost contact and were suspected to be dead. Therefore, they could only ask for help from those on the dark list. They had to pay a price. However, Ancient Profound Society was rich and did not hesitate much. In a few words, Chunzong understood the cause and effect. You are known as the Chaotic Sword, and your sword technique is extremely strong. You are exactly what we need. If you have any conditions, please state them, Steward Lin said generously. Besides me, who else did you invite? Chunzong did not immediately agree. After pondering for a while, he asked in return. Exploring the secret place was dangerous. Of course, there were also benefits, but they needed to be considered carefully. There are not many prodigies on the dark list in Xianming City. Besides you, we also invited Bloodscar Lord, Nan Wukong, Mad Slayer Zheng Tuo, and Jackdaw. In addition, there is also our Ancient Profound Society's Dark Sky Sword, Lin Yi, Steward Lin said. In this way, there were 5 prodigies on the dark list. Bloodscar Lord, Nan Wukong, was ranked 84th. Mad Slayer Zheng Tuo was ranked 80th. As for Jackdaw, he was ranked 89th. He was very mysterious. Jackdaw was both a title and a name. Of course, it was hard to say whether it was a real name. As for Lin Yi, he was ranked 91st on the dark list. In Xianming City, the person with the highest ranking on the dark list was Mad Slayer Zheng Tuo. Sir Primeval Chaos Sword, if you agree to the invitation of our Ancient Profound Society, we will first provide a batch of suitable medicinal pills. You can choose the type of medicinal pill yourself. In addition, we will also provide 2 high-level half-saint artifacts. One is a weapon and the other is an armor. Manager Lin continued, tempting Chunzong. Chunzong did not answer immediately. Instead, he was thinking. Steward Lin did not disturb him. The room was silent. About half an hour later, Chunzong's eyes flashed with a bright light. Okay. Chunzong agreed. Sir, you won't regret it. Steward Lin smiled, as if relieved. If Chunzong did not agree, he would have to spend more effort to persuade him. However, he did not know if it would work in the end. If it still did not work, he would have to choose someone else. In addition to this meeting gift, we will add 20 Dragon Tiger Blood Soul Elixirs, 30 Xian Yuan Refining Sage Elixirs, 20 Minor Recovery Elixirs, 20 Minor Chaotic Sky Elixirs, and 10 Minor Revival Elixirs. Steward Lin quickly said, as for the 2 high-level half-saint artifacts, you can choose from the ancient Xian building. These are only the initial rewards. After exploring the secret place, you will be given the subsequent rewards according to the value of the secret place, Steward Lin added. 1 Dragon Tiger Blood Soul Elixir was worth 1 Earth Essence Elixir. 20 Dragon Tiger Blood Soul Elixirs were equivalent to 20 Earth Essence Elixirs. Including the previous 10, it would be 30 Earth Essence Elixirs. As for the Xian Yuan Refining Sage Elixirs, They were also worth 1 Earth Essence Elixir. The Minor Recovery Elixirs and Minor Chaotic Sky Elixirs were elixirs for recovering chi refinement and body refinement. There were 20 of each, so the total value was 20 Earth Essence Elixirs. The Minor Revival Elixirs were healing elixirs that could treat internal and external injuries. The effect was very obvious. 1 pill was worth 2 Earth Essence Elixirs. In this way, it would be 100 Earth Essence Elixirs. A high-level half-saint artifact was also worth a lot of Earth Essence Elixirs. 2 of them would be worth even more. In this way, it would cost 300 to 400 Earth Essence Elixirs. This was only the initial reward. It had to be said that the rewards given by the ancient Xian society were indeed very good. Of course, it was also because they had invited the Netherworld ranking prodigies. If they were not, how could it be worth so much? From another point, it could be seen that the ancient Xian society was rich and sincere. After all, according to a normal point of view, the initial reward was usually small. The later rewards would be greater. Soon, all kinds of promised elixirs were sent over. Chunzong glanced at them, waved his hand, and put them into his storage ring without hesitation. Seeing Chunzong's actions, Steward Lin smiled. In fact, he also admired people like Chunzong. He would not deliberately put on airs and try to win people over. If he could, he would. If he could not, he would not. He was simple and direct. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Sir, do you want to choose a high-level half-saint artifact now? Steward Lin asked. Please lead the way. Chunzong naturally would not stand on ceremony. His mountain beheading sword was given to him by the Refinement Cloud Sectmaster of White Cloud Mountain. It was only a mid-level half-saint artifact. Its power was not as strong as a high-level half-saint artifact. Now that he could obtain a high-level half-saint artifact, his overall strength could be improved further. The ancient Xian building had 5 floors. The high-level half-saint artifact was placed on the 3rd floor. In front of him were many high-level half-saint artifacts. There were sabers, swords, and other weapons. There were also armor, combat shoes, and other defenses. The initial reward was 2 high-level half-saint artifacts, 1 weapon and 1 defense. Chunzong looked at the swords. There were a total of 9 high-level half-saint swords here. They were all different in appearance, length, and thickness. Steward Lin, please let me see this sword. Chunzong glanced at them and pointed at one of the swords. Steward Lin immediately opened the seal and took the sword. The body of the sword was pitch black, and the spine of the sword was gilded. It seemed to be flowing continuously and was very agile. However, the width, thickness, and length of this sword were about the same as the heavy dragon sword. This was also why Chunzong chose it at a glance. As soon as the sword was in his hand, Chunzong was surprised by its extreme weight. It was at least 50,000 kilograms. Chapter 1343. The sword was the gilded mountainous sword, and the armor was the triple dragon rhino armor. Its defensive power was amazing, and it could withstand the power of an ordinary high-level half-saint. With the elixir and high-grade half-saint artifact in hand, Chunzong's overall strength had improved by quite a bit. He returned to the Xianming Institute and cultivated while waiting. Chunzong tried the Dragon Tiger Blood Spirit elixir. Its effect was not bad, but of course it couldn't be compared to the previous 4 blood elixirs. He also used the Dragon Tiger Blood Spirit elixir, which was more than twice as effective. As for the Xianyuan Refining Sage elixir, its effect was also good. It was very helpful for low-level half-saints. After Chunzong refined the elixir, he could feel his cultivation gradually increasing. It was much more obvious than normal cultivation. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Chunzong received an invitation from the Xianming Institute. He put on the triple dragon rhino armor and a cloud-white robe. He carried the Nirvana evil sword on his back and held the high-level half-saint gilded mountainous sword in his left hand. He walked out of the Xianming Institute number 93 and headed for the Xianming building. Since he had a high-level half-saint artifact, the heavy dragon sword and mountain beheading sword would also be retired and stored away. Although the heavy dragon sword was only a 9th grade spirit artifact, It was a gift from Senior Sister Union Sheen, and the mountain beheading sword was a gift from Refinement Cloud's sect master. They were both memorable. When Chunzong arrived at the 5th floor of the Xianming building, he saw several other figures. Each of them was emitting a shocking aura, which made Chunzong's pupil shrink. Including Chunzong, there were a total of 5 people. One of them was Steward Lin of the Xianming building. As for the other 3, one of them was wearing a wide black robe. Even his head was covered by the robe. He looked very mysterious. There was also a faintly discernible aura around him, making it impossible for others to see through him. He was Jackdaw, 89th on the Netherworld ranking. As for the other 2, one of them was wearing a purple robe. His eyes were long and narrow, and he emitted a cold aura. He was Bloodscar Lord, 84th on the Netherworld ranking, Nan Wukong. The other one was dressed in black. His body looked strong and fierce, and a brazen aura pervaded the surroundings. He was Berserk Zhanzheng Tua, ranked 80th on the Netherworld ranking. Steward Lin introduced them with a smile, allowing the 4 to get to know each other. Nan Wukong and Zheng Tua had known each other for a long time and were very familiar with each other. "Please take a seat and wait for a moment," Steward Lin said as he ordered people to bring over delicious snacks and tea. They didn't know each other. Jackdaw was a taciturn person. He didn't speak at all. Nan Wukong and Zheng Tua chatted. Chunzong sat to the side, not interrupting. "Brother Chun, that sword technique of yours, impenetrable chaotic elements, is truly breathtaking." Zheng Tua suddenly turned his head and smiled at Chunzong. "Brother Zheng, you flatter me." Chunzong smiled and said, "Who doesn't know of Mad Slash's fame? He's invincible." "Ha ha ha. I am curious to see if Brother Chin's unbreakable primordial chaos can block my Mad Slash," Zheng Tua said with a laugh. "There will be a chance," Chunzong said with a smile. Nan Wukong snorted coldly, as if he didn't care. However, this person looked very arrogant, so Chunzong didn't intend to pay attention to him. Time passed slowly. About 15 minutes later, another person arrived. This person wore a long robe interwoven with gold and silver threads. He looked somewhat gorgeous. His expression was calm, but there was a trace of arrogance and sharpness in his eyes. He had a long sword at his waist, and his entire body was filled with traces of astonishing sharpness, like invisible sword chi. "Lin Yi, you're here," Steward Lin said with a smile when he saw the young man. Lin Yi, the Xiankong sword, ranked 91st on the dark list. Then Steward Lin started to introduce him. They were all on the dark list, but some might not have seen each other before. Lin Yi was very arrogant, but when he heard Chunzong, the impenetrable primordial chaos sword, his eyes shone with a sharp light. "You're Chunzong," Lin Yi said coldly. He looked down at Chunzong as if he was examining him. Firstly, Chunzong practiced swordsmanship, and so did he. Secondly, when Chunzong and Li Shilong had a life-and-death battle, Lin Yi was still cultivating in seclusion and didn't see it with his own eyes. However, after he came out of seclusion, he heard that Chunzong's swordsmanship was so brilliant that he was even compared to the peerless Sword King. Didn't this mean that Chunzong was better than Lin Yi? Lin Yi had been practicing swordsmanship since he was young. He had a unique talent in swordsmanship, and his progress in swordsmanship was gratifying. He constantly surpassed his peers and his seniors. With his superb swordsmanship, he defeated countless opponents and ranked 91st on the dark list. After this seclusion, Lin Yi felt that his swordsmanship had improved, and he could definitely rank higher on the dark list. He was also very confident that his swordsmanship could continue to improve. When he came out of seclusion full of confidence, he heard such news. Moreover, Chunzong was previously unknown and ranked lower than him on the dark list. How could he be happy with his arrogance? Now that he saw Chunzong, it was inevitable that he wanted to target him. "Lin Yi, this time you will lead the team to explore the sealed world. This is a matter of great importance. You can't act on impulse," Manager Lin said solemnly. "I know," Lin Yi responded coldly. Immediately, Manager Lin took out 5 small jade boxes and handed them to the 5 people. This is a burst you on pill. It can increase the power of your half-saint force and temporarily increase your strength. Its effect is similar to the berserk pill, but it doesn't have as big of a side effect as the berserk pill. Use it carefully, Manager Lin said solemnly. 5 burst you on pills, 1 for each person. This was a pill for the 5 people to use in times of danger. After all, the degree of danger in the sealed world was unknown, so it was better to be prepared. After everything was ready, Manager Lin and the few Saint Realm Masters led the guards and quickly left the ancient profound tower. They also left mysterious underworld city and went deeper into the mountains. In a remote mountain valley, there was a team of 10 Saint Realm Masters stationed there. Among these 10 Saint Realm Masters, 2 of them were at the Mastery Saint Realm, while the remaining 8 were at the Intermediate Saint Realm. They could be considered a very powerful force. Looking at the armor they wore, all of them had the symbol of the Ancient Profound Society. They were the masters sent by the Ancient Profound Society to guard the entrance to the sealed world. Commander Lin. Manager Lin approached and cupped his fists. Manager Lin's position in the Ancient Profound Tower was not low, but one of the 8th Heaven Saint Realm Masters stationed here had a higher position. Manager Lin, you're here, Commander Lin nodded. Immediately, his gaze swept across Chunzong and the other 4 people. When he saw Lin Yi, he smiled and nodded. Lin Yi was a member of the Ancient Profound Society. As a Heaven's Pride on the Dark List, his future achievements would be extraordinary. At the very least, he would be a Mastery Saint Realm Master. It was very likely that he would reach the peak of the Saint Realm. Once Lin Yi grew up, he would become one of the pillars of the Ancient Profound Society, further strengthening the Ancient Profound Society. I'm afraid this sealed world is not simple. The 5 of you, remember to be careful, Commander Lin said after retracting his gaze. He was quite polite. After all, these people were all Heaven's Prides on the Dark List. Each of them had extraordinary potential. In the future, their achievements would be above his. If he was slightly polite, he would not lose anything. As the leader, you must remember to remain calm at all times. Only by remaining calm will you not make a mistake. Commander Lin looked at Lin Yi and instructed. Don't worry, Uncle Lin. I know what to do, Lin Yi said. That's good. Now get ready. We'll open the door to the sealed world, Commander Lin immediately ordered after he finished speaking. Chunzong and the other 3 did not have any objections to Lin Yi being the leader. To put it bluntly, Lin Yi was a member of the Ancient Profound Society. This time, the Ancient Profound Society hired them. Their relationship was very clear. If they did not let Lin Yi lead the team, the Ancient Profound Society would not be so assured. The door to the sealed world was usually sealed. It would only be opened when they wanted to enter. This way, they could avoid accidents. The door to the sealed world was located in the depths of an underground cave. They had to walk continuously inside. After walking for about a few thousand meters, they arrived. The heavy door was unsealed and opened. Traces of astonishing, mysterious aura immediately spread out. The water-like cyan light fluctuated continuously. It was full of wonder. Primeval Chaos Sword Chunzong. Your sword technique is known as the Primeval Chaos Sword. Your defense is amazing. You'll be the first to enter. Lin Yi began to exercise his authority to lead the team. After all, as the leader, he had to make some judgments and so on. Chunzong did not have any objections. He took a step forward and walked into the sealed world. His body seemed to be swallowed and disappeared. Zheng Tuo, you'll be the second to enter, Lin Yi said. Zheng Tuo did not have any objections and stepped in. Primeval Chaos Sword Chunzong was known as the Primeval Chaos Sword and was good at defense. Zheng Tuo could be seen from his name that he was good at offense. A combination of defense and offense was undoubtedly very suitable. The 3 of us will enter, Lin Yi said. With a flicker of his body, he entered the door of the secret place. Nan Wukong followed him. Jackdaw followed them silently, like a ghost. I hope they can explore the secrets of the sealed world, Commander Lin said. He seemed to be talking to himself, but also seemed to be talking to Steward Lin. I hope so, Steward Lin said. Not only did they have to explore the sealed world, but they also had to stay alive. After all, they were all geniuses on the Netherworld ranking. One death would be a great loss. Chunzong was the first to enter the sealed world. He was extremely alert and focused. The gilded heavy mountain in his hand was ready to unsheathe at any time and burst forth with amazing power. However, after entering, Chunzong did not encounter any attacks. On the contrary, he was very calm and safe. His eyes flickered with a sharp light as he quickly scanned his surroundings. It looked like a square, a very spacious square. The light was dim, and the ground of the square was dark. It was filled with traces of cold aura. At that moment, a fluctuation appeared. Chunzong quickly turned around and slid back to open up some distance. Wild Slash Zheng Tuo appeared. As soon as Zheng Tuo appeared, he tensed up and prepared to attack. He quickly looked around and relaxed a little. Then Lin Yi, Nin Wukong, and Jackdaw stepped in one after another. The five of them looked around the dark and wide square and carefully searched everything. Let's go, Lin, he said in a low voice. Lin, he said in a low voice. The five of them started to move. They quickly moved forward and raised their vigilance to guard against possible dangers. Gu Xianhui had sent a group of powerful high-level half-saints into the sealed world, but they all died not long after entering. Because of this, Gu Xianhui had no choice but to ask the Netherworld ranking geniuses to help. After all, saints could not enter. The Netherworld ranking geniuses were the most powerful half-saints. Ordinary high-level half-saints could not compare. Chapter 1344. A chilly wind swept across, appearing out of thin air. As it blew past, the five of them couldn't help but tremble as their skin went numb. The five of them immediately became extremely vigilant. Their aura spread around their bodies, forming a natural cycle that circulated endlessly. After pausing for a few breaths, except for the chilly wind that blew from time to time, nothing else appeared. The five of them continued to move forward, but still maintained a high degree of vigilance. This dim square seemed to be man-made. It was very spacious, and the light in the distance was getting dimmer. Even with their outstanding eyesight, it became blurred and difficult to see clearly. Let's split up and check out the situation. Lenny frowned slightly and said immediately. His words were firm and unquestionable. The four of them didn't have any objections. Simply put, when they had no objections to Lin Yi being the leader, they wouldn't have any objections to some of Lin Yi's commands. Of course, it also depended on what command it was. If it was just a random command, no one would pay attention to him. In an instant, the five of them rushed in different directions at an extremely fast speed. Immediately, as if they had a tacit understanding, they all paused. Their pupils shrank in an instant, emitting a wisp of light. At the edge of the square, huge sarcophagi seemed to be embedded in the wall. Each sarcophagus was about 10 meters apart from each other. Each sarcophagus was carved with many strange lines. When combined, they looked like ferocious beasts. From those sarcophagi, everyone could feel an indescribable chill. Suddenly, a cracking sound rang out. It was extremely ear-piercing, causing the five of them to tremble slightly and become even more vigilant. A crack suddenly appeared on the sarcophagus, and it opened little by little. The lid of the sarcophagus seemed to weigh 10,000 pounds, making a dull sound that reverberated endlessly in the dim square. The chilly wind suddenly roared and blew. Wisps of black aura rushed out from the opened sarcophagus, like smoke rising in spirals and rolling in waves. The chill invaded, as if it was a gloomy hell. The five of them were not ordinary cultivators. Without hesitation, they immediately retreated and gathered again. There seemed to be something inside the sarcophagus that was awakening as the sarcophagus opened, filling the air with an astonishing aura. It was still unclear whether they were strong or weak, so it was not advisable to attack them directly. Moreover, there were many stone coffins, so it was better to gather them first. When the lid of the sarcophagus was completely opened, a black aura that was so dense that it could not be dispersed permeated and rolled within the sarcophagus. It vaguely emitted a roar like the waves of the sea, and also like a black hurricane that wanted to shatter everything. It was as if an extremely terrifying monster was being nurtured within. Bang, bang, bang. Continuous explosions sounded. Clusters of surging waves of dense black chi exploded, transforming into shocking black waves that surged out. There was a total of 50 of them. They were like 50 long rivers that surged over. They were extremely dark and cold, and contained an incomparably terrifying, baleful aura. This caused the expressions of the 5 people to change as they became increasingly solemn. Baleful chi. The 50 black auras were actually extremely dense, baleful auras. As the baleful auras rushed over, they felt a fluctuation that originated from their minds and minds before they were affected. It was as if illusions were appearing. It was as if there were vengeful spirits tearing the air apart with their sharp claws, and there seemed to be corpses floating up and down. Baleful chi was a very terrifying force. Once one was hit by the baleful aura, if one's mind and mind were not strong enough, they would be affected and hallucinate. They might even be immersed in the baleful aura until their mental strength was exhausted and they became puppets like walking corpses. However, the 5 of them were all heaven's prides on the netherworld list. Not only did they have outstanding talent and potential, but their souls were also stronger than an ordinary sage to be. Their minds and wills were also more tenacious, so their resistance to the baleful aura was naturally stronger. Although that was the case, no one was willing to bear the baleful aura's impact. It would constantly deplete one's mental strength and mental strength. Although the 5 of them had never practiced before, they were all battle-hardened and experienced. In an instant, they made accurate judgments and actions. Back to back, they faced the baleful aura head-on and attacked one after another. Lin unsheathed his gorgeous longsword. The clanging sound was clear and sharp, and the sword light was dazzling. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in the darkness. Several beams of sword light surged out, sweeping across the sky like a crescent moon. While Zhang Tua shook his arms and clenched his fists, he suddenly threw 2 punches. The power of his punches turned into a roaring storm. Nan Wukong's fingers glowed with a blood-red light like a sword. He slashed forward. The movement seemed light, but it was very fast. It seemed to cut through the air, leaving behind a blood-red mark. At some point, a black short bow had appeared in Jackdaw's hand, but there were no arrows. He drew the bow. A black light condensed into an arrow and shot out. Unsheathing the gilded mountainous sword, Chunzong unleashed the astonishing weight of 150 kilograms in an instant. It was as if he was moving a mountain, creating a terrifying gust of wind that blasted forward. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly. As soon as the 5 of them attacked, they immediately shattered the 50 beams of baleful aura. Their terrible power forced the baleful aura back. However, the baleful aura spread out quickly. It spread in all directions, filling the dark square. After all, no matter how big the square was, there was a limit. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't avoid it. They could only let the baleful aura spread out and reduce its impact. This was unavoidable. Even if they were affected by the baleful aura, it wouldn't be so strong. A terrible roar sounded. It was like the roar of some kind of fierce beast. It was very strange. When it reached the ears of the group, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. It was a hair-raising feeling. Scarlet light shot out like an aurora, piercing through the black, baleful aura. It stared at the 5 of them from all directions, as if it had discovered a peerless delicacy. It roared madly and charged at them. Even though the black, baleful aura interfered with their vision, they could still see the bodies shooting out scarlet light. People. At least they looked like people. They ran on 2 hands and feet, but they weren't human either. Their robes were tattered, as if they had been eroded by time. Their exposed skin was pitch black, and there were many wounds. It was a ghastly sight. Baleful aura like a tide. These are baleful corpses. Zheng Tuo's expression was grave. Baleful corpses. They were monsters formed from corpses that had mutated under the influence of baleful aura. They were powerful and fast, and their bodies were stronger than steel. They also carried baleful poison. If they were hit, the poison would enter their bodies and infect them, turning them into baleful corpses. There were a total of 50 baleful corpses. They rushed out of the stone coffins at an astonishing speed. The terrifying baleful aura mixed with a shocking stench assaulted them. It was nauseating and frightening. They're very fast. They're at least high-level half-saint. Suddenly, Lenny stared at a few of the baleful corpses, and his expression changed greatly. He found that the baleful corpses looked familiar. He had seen them before. When he thought about it, he knew that they were high-level half-saints from the Gu Xianhui who had been sent here before. He didn't expect that not only did they die, but they also became terrifying baleful corpses. The 5 of them knew that if they were careless, they might suffer a big loss here. They might even be hit and turn into baleful corpses. The 50 baleful corpses approached swiftly with a speed as swift as lightning. They brandished their sharp claws and attacked madly, bringing along a wave of extremely terrifying fishy wind as they charged over. The stench made them feel dizzy. The 5 of them quickly held their breath to avoid the stench from entering their bodies and affecting their strength. He slashed out with his sword. The brilliant sword light was extremely dazzling, with a mysterious charm. It hit a baleful corpse, but it made a dull sound. The huge impact shattered the sword light. The baleful corpse's body also flew out, but it didn't suffer any obvious damage. Chunzong slashed out with his sword. Under the collision, Chunzong could feel the strong recoil. However, under the amazing power of the gilded mountain-heavy sword, the baleful corpse was directly blasted back dozens of meters. It collided with other baleful corpses, and several baleful corpses fell to the ground and rolled. Such a powerful slash didn't kill the baleful corpse. It only left a sword mark on its body. Chunzong was surprised. The body of this baleful corpse was so hard that it was almost comparable to a high-level half-saint weapon. If the other baleful corpses were the same, there would be as many as 50 such baleful corpses. It was no wonder that the high-level half-saints who had entered before had died. How could they be a match for such terrifying, baleful corpses? Even though the 5 of them were all geniuses on the Netherworld list and were powerful, they still felt the pressure. As the evil spirit pervaded the air, the baleful corpses that had been injured by them absorbed the evil spirit. Their wounds healed, and their combat strength was not affected at all. This is not good. The environment here is advantageous to the baleful corpses. Zheng Tuo looked serious. The 5 of them relied on each other. They faced the baleful corpses with their backs against each other. For a moment, they were in a stalemate. The evil spirit environment was advantageous to the baleful corpses, but not to the 5 of them. Although the evil spirit had been scattered and thinned, it would constantly attack their minds and wills. It was fine for a short period of time, as they could completely withstand it. However, as the battle went on, the effects would become more obvious. These baleful corpses were very difficult to deal with. It was not easy to kill them. Some injuries would not affect their strength. I have a way to absorb the evil spirit here, but I need you to protect me, Chunzong said. Okay. The 4 of them immediately agreed. Immediately, the 4 of them spread out and protected Chunzong in the middle. The reason why Chunzong said this was because of the Azura avatar. After entering here, Chunzong also noticed that the Azura clone strength was suppressed. After all, the Azura clone's cultivation was at the Saint Rudiment stage. Since the Saint Rudiment stage cultivation was restricted here, it was suppressed and could not be stimulated. However, this would not affect the absorption of the evil spirit for cultivation. Chunzong had already tried it a little, which was why he said this. With the protection of the 4 of them, Chunzong immediately let the Azura clone, in his knowledge, cultivate with all its might. As soon as the top-grade Saint-grade burning evil Azura skill was activated, the evil spirit that permeated the air suddenly surged from all directions like a tide and spread toward Chunzong. Immediately, Chunzong's entire body was wrapped up. It was so shocking that it shocked the other four. Chapter 1345. The murderous aura surged like a tide, gathering from all directions, swift and fierce like 100 rivers returning to the stream. When the murderous aura swept past, Zheng Tuo and the other three felt a chill and could not help but shiver. But when they thought of Chunzong being able to absorb the murderous aura, they had to endure it. Otherwise, if the murderous aura was not removed, the 50 corpses would be like fish in water, and it would be very disadvantageous to the 5 of them. As the murderous aura entered his body, Chunzong also felt a chill invade his body, like the edge of a sword raging through his body, making Chunzong extremely uncomfortable. But unknowingly, it also increased Chunzong's ability to withstand the murderous aura. Although the murderous aura was very fierce and impure, it was nothing to the Azura doppelganger Chinshio. The burning Azura skill immediately refined, purified, and absorbed the murderous aura into holy aura, continuously increasing his cultivation. The murderous aura had been accumulating for many years and was very majestic. Even after refining most of the impure aura, the remaining pure aura was very shocking. Chunzong estimated that after refining all the murderous aura here, his Azura doppelganger's cultivation would increase. Seeming to feel the murderous aura diminishing, the corpses instinctively felt that something was wrong and became violent. Roar, roar, roar. Violent roars sounded again and again as the corpses madly charged. They felt that the source of the diminishing murderous aura was there. Only by killing that person could they stop the diminishing of the murderous aura. Suddenly, Zheng Tuo and the other 3 felt the pressure increase. But no matter how great the pressure was, they had to hold on. Otherwise, if they disturbed Chunzong and prevented him from absorbing the murderous aura, they would fall into the same predicament as before. They could only hope that Chunzong would finish absorbing the murderous aura as soon as possible. After a while, the murderous aura had mostly disappeared and the corpses became even more violent. Zheng Tuo and the other 3 surrounded Chunzong, resisting the attacks of the frenzied corpses. Zheng Tuo was no longer empty-handed. With a heavy saber in his hand, he used both hands to create a violent hurricane. Every stroke of the saber burst forth with shocking power, extremely violent. Looking at this saber technique, the wild slash lived up to its name. Nan Wukong's finger technique was astonishing. Every finger was as sharp as a sword, shining with a blood-colored light. It left streaks of blood in the air, shocking to the eye. Lin Yi's sword technique was indeed superb. The sword light was extremely dazzling, and every single sword strike was extremely profound. Moreover, it even contained a type of indescribable emptiness, and every single sword strike was lethal. With Jackdaw's short bow in hand, he continued to fire black arrows at the oncoming corpses, forcing them back one by one. The prodigies of a netherworld role were very powerful. If it had been an ordinary high-level half-saint, he would have been killed by the fiendish corpses long ago. As the baleful aura decreased, the corpses became more and more violent. Chunzong continued to absorb the baleful aura, and the cultivation of the Azura avatar also gradually increased. Mid-First Heaven's Saint Realm. Chunzong, are you done yet? Lin Yi roared in a low voice. The pressure brought by the fiend corpses was getting stronger and stronger. Gradually, he felt that he could not hold on any longer. Wait a moment. Chunzong's reply was brief. The last of the baleful aura was absorbed into his body, and the hall instantly became clear again. The Azura avatar's cultivation also broke through in an instant. Late First Heaven's Saint Realm. It was not easy to raise one's cultivation in the Saint Realm. It usually required a lot of effort, energy, and time. Being able to break through from the early to late First Heaven Saint realm was a great gain. Disregarding everything else, just the increase in the cultivation of the Azura avatar was a great gain for Chunzong. At the very least, he had saved several years of cultivation time, and his life-saving trump card had become more powerful. After the baleful aura entered his body, his ability to withstand the baleful aura had also increased greatly. In the future, when he borrowed the power of the Azura avatar, he would be able to bear the burden better. The gilded, mountainous sword trembled, and a dull sound rang out. Sword chi swept through the air, instantly sending a few fiend corpses flying. With the disappearance of the baleful aura, everyone felt a lot more comfortable. Chunzong's participation in the battle also relieved the pressure on the four of them. Without the baleful aura, the fiend corpses also lost a little bit of their advantage. The 150-kilogram gilded mountainous sword was extremely terrifying. Chunzong had completely unleashed its power, and every strike was overbearing. Slash, slash, slash. The sword light was endless, and a golden light streaked across the sky. Even though the sword was extremely heavy, weighing 150 kilograms, Chunzong's strength was even more powerful. His control of the sword and his own strength was so high that the weight of the sword did not affect him in the slightest. After a few consecutive slashes, the hard skin and body of the fiend corpses were instantly cut in half. Without the baleful aura, the fiend corpses would not be able to recover quickly once they were injured, and their advantage was not obvious. The five of them brought out their respective strengths, and under their joint efforts, the fiend corpses were killed one after another. Subconsciously, the five of them also secretly competed to see who could kill more fiend corpses. Half an hour later, all 50 fiend corpses were killed. Among them, Chunzong had killed 12, Zheng Tuo had killed 13, Nin Wukong had killed 11, Lin Yi had killed 8, and Jackdaw had killed 6. Chunzong killed 12. This caused Nin Wukong's eyes to narrow, and they seemed even narrower. Lin Yi, on the other hand, looked somewhat displeased. Jackdaw, on the other hand, did not look strange at all, or rather, even if there was something strange, it would not be obvious. Immediately, the five of them also quickly checked. The 50 stone coffins were completely opened, the baleful aura had disappeared, and the 50 fiend corpses had all been killed. Then what next? If they could not find another door, could they only leave? Leave with nothing? Just as everyone was puzzled, a strong wave of energy seemed to appear from nowhere. The five of them immediately gathered their strength and were extremely vigilant. TSK, 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 TSK. A hoarse, gloomy, and sharp, strange laughter suddenly sounded. It was incomparably ear-piercing, like rusty iron pieces crazily rubbing against each other, causing one to feel extremely uncomfortable. Immediately, a gust of cold wind swept up and whistled. A faint figure also appeared in the vast hall. This figure seemed to be shrouded in a black robe and had a very mysterious appearance, as if it was a projection from another world. When this black-robed figure appeared, a terrifying pressure filled the air. It was as cold and gloomy as hell, as majestic and powerful as a mountain. This figure was extremely terrifying and was definitely a master among the Saint Realm Masters, causing all five of them to feel a fatal crisis. Senior, how should we address you? As the leader, Lin Yi was the first to speak, carefully asking. This senior is Corpse Bone Taoist, the black figure replied. The black shadow spoke. His hoarse and sharp voice was still so ear-piercing, but it still shocked everyone. Chunzong did not feel much. After all, he had never heard this name before, but the other four, including Jackdaw, all shivered. Corpse Taoist. Lin, he was tongue-tied as he spoke. He was very shocked and even a little frightened. Chunzong didn't know about the Corpse Taoist reputation, but they did. The Corpse Taoist was a super expert ranked in the top 10 of the profound ranking. His reputation was not good, but evil. Other than Chunzong, who was a newcomer, many people in the entire mysterious Nether territory knew of the Corpse Taoist's ferocity and terror. Anyone who could be ranked on the profound ranking had terrifying strength, and the strength of the top 10 was even more shocking. Don't be nervous. If this senior wanted to kill you, you wouldn't be standing here in one piece, the corpse Taoist figure laughed. However, everyone could not help but feel their hair stand on end. Even though Chun Zong did not know of the corpse Taoist's ferocity, he still felt his heart palpitate. It seemed that if the corpse Taoist wanted them dead, none of them would be able to survive. Even the mysterious Nether Palace had to be wary of the corpse Taoist, who was infamous for killing. You're lucky to be able to find a cave mansion that this senior left here, the corpse Taoist figure said again. I have left a great opportunity in here, but whether you can get it or not depends on whether you can pass the test I set for you. The mysterious figure of the corpse priest said again. His voice was still as ear-piercing as ever. Everyone's breathing quickened when they heard about the opportunity. An opportunity left by a top 10 master of the profound ranking was definitely extraordinary. After the corpse Taoist figure finished speaking, he disappeared as if he had never appeared. That terrifying aura also disappeared without a trace. Who is the corpse Taoist? Chun Zong still asked. You don't know the corpse Taoist? Linny asked. The corpse Taoist is a super master ranked 8th on the profound ranking, and he is also a rogue cultivator. He is temperamental. If it's light, he will kill someone, and if it's heavy, he will destroy a sect. His strength is extremely powerful, and even the mysterious Nether Palace does not want to provoke him, Zheng Tuo said calmly. As far as I know, the corpse Taoist obtained a great opportunity in his early years. It seems to be called the corpse Tao inheritance. That's how he became known as the corpse Taoist, Nin Wukong added. Chun Zong was shocked when he heard that. The mysterious underworld ranking in the mysterious Nether territory was actually the shadow of the profound ranking. It was even more difficult to be ranked on the profound ranking than the underworld ranking. The 8th on the profound ranking was an amazing ranking. It was impossible to estimate how powerful he was. He was definitely many times more powerful than Wine Sage. Most importantly, the corpse Taoist was a rogue cultivator. He had no ties, and his strength was so terrifying that no one wanted to provoke him. After all, if they provoked such an expert, they would not be able to kill him instantly. Instead, they would be targeted for revenge. Anyone would tremble in fear if they were targeted by an extremely powerful expert. Even a powerful force like the mystic Nether Palace would be worried and fearful. After all, the mysterious Nether Palace was large and had many members. However, there were very few people who could fight with an expert like the corpse Taoist. There were only 2 or 3 of them in the entire mysterious Nether Palace. Could it be that these experts did not cultivate and only protected the others in the mysterious Nether Palace? That was impossible. According to them, the reason why the corpse Taoist could be ranked in the top 10 of the profound ranking and no one dared to provoke him in the mysterious Nether territory was not only because of his strength, but also because of his corpse puppets. The corpse Tao that the corpse Taoist inherited was very unique. It could refine corpse puppets. It was rumored that the corpse Taoist had 9 terrifying corpse puppets whose strength had reached the peak of the Saint Rudiment realm. They were not afraid of pain and death. If they joined forces with the corpse Taoist, their strength would be even more terrifying. Everyone was looking forward to what kind of opportunity the corpse Taoist would leave behind. The corpse Tao inheritance? It should not be. What could it be? Chapter 1346. Outside the sealed world, the Saint Realm Masters of the Ancient Profound Association were still waiting. Inside the sealed world, Chun Zong's group of 5 was also waiting for the test the corpse Taoist had mentioned. A cold wind appeared out of thin air, sweeping in from all directions as a white bone door appeared out of thin air, gradually solidifying in front of everyone. Seeing this door, everyone felt a chill run down their spines and a chill run down their spines. Pieces of pale bones and skulls were pieced together, and the empty eye sockets above the skulls were dark and deep, as if they were staring at everyone. An astonishing chill constantly spread out from the white bone door, as if a peerless demon was sleeping inside, striking fear into everyone. For a moment, the five of them didn't move, as an invisible pressure appeared in their hearts, tugging at their heartstrings. Chunzong took a deep breath, eliminating the trace of hesitation and fear that had appeared in his heart. Immediately, Zheng Tuo and the others' expressions became firm. Even if what lay ahead was hell, what harm was there? Chunzong, you're best at defense, so you'll be the first to enter, Linny said directly. Zheng Te, you and Chunzong going together. One attacking and one defending, their coordination was excellent. Chunzong and Zheng Tuo had no objections, and the two stepped out together, their figures instantly disappearing into the white bone door. Let's go, Lin immediately said, stepping out and stepping into the white bone door with Nan Wukong and Jackdaw. As soon as he stepped through the white bone door, Chunzong felt a cold aura spread out, attaching to his skin, as if it wanted to seep into his bone marrow. It was more like the roar of a ghost, rushing straight to his knowledge sea. Looking over, Chunzong saw countless corpses floating about like a river. Their pale and empty eyes seemed to be staring at him, causing Chunzong's hair to stand on end. A chill uncontrollably spread out from the depths of his heart. Immediately, Chunzong's pupils shrank as he saw a mountain of pale bones in the distance. A river of corpses, a mountain of bones. What was this place? Chunzong also discovered that Zheng Tuo, who had entered the bone gate with him, had disappeared. This was a world of corpses and skeletons, and he was the only one alive. Suddenly, a sense of loneliness, as if he had been abandoned by the world, emerged from the depths of his heart. Waves of gloomy winds blew over, and they carried a nauseating smell of decay and were suffused with a pale white and deathly still aura. It filled the heavens and the earth, and it stood aloof from the world and seemed to be targeted, rejected, and hostile by the entire world. Indescribable chaotic willpower came from all directions and rushed into Chunzong's sea of consciousness, wreaking havoc in his sea of consciousness, as if trying to tear Chunzong's sea of consciousness apart. Under the impact of this chaotic will, his spiritual will was like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. However, Chunzong's soul was extremely powerful. Even his spiritual will had been strengthened a lot. Facing such a chaotic and majestic attack, he could completely withstand it. His soul fire burned, and the chaotic will was burned away one by one. However, the indescribable sense of loneliness could not be rejected. Instead, it accumulated and deepened, becoming more and more powerful. Loneliness was the natural enemy of intelligent beings, especially human cultivators. Being in a state of loneliness for a long time was a great challenge to one's mind, especially in this environment, where corpses formed rivers and bones formed mountains and gloomy winds blew. The chaotic willpower was like a ghost, constantly eroding one's mind and attacking one's spiritual will. While enduring the impact of the chaotic willpower, Chunzong scanned his surroundings with his sharp eyes. An illusion? A thought came to Chunzong's mind. If it was not an illusion, how could there be such a terrifying scene? Zheng Tuo and the other three had also disappeared. However, it was too real. Chunzong was confident that with his current ability, ordinary illusions would not work at all. After all, illusions targeted the mind, or rather, the spiritual will, which was related to the soul. Chunzong's soul was extremely powerful, and so was his mind. If his mind was not moved, it would be difficult for external evil to invade. Ordinary illusions would not be able to confuse him at all. Chunzong dared to say that even a mastery Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse would fall for his illusions if they wanted to confuse him. However, if it was not an illusion, it would be too shocking. Kikik, enter my corpse prison, and you'll only be able to break free from the killing tribulation and refining heart. A gloomy, sharp, and hoarse voice suddenly sounded as if it came from the depths of his heart, startling Chunzong slightly. It was the corpse Taoist's voice. This was a test set by the corpse Taoist. As for why he left a cave mansion in this place and set up a test, Qinzong had no idea. After all, the expert had his own way of doing things. In other words, the corpse Taoist did things based on his mood and was temperamental. Perhaps he left a test or an opportunity behind when he was in a good mood. That was the corpse Taoist's business. As for now, he had to get out of this corpse prison, or rather, leave this corpse prison. Killing tribulation and refining heart. Qinzong pondered, pondering the meaning behind it. Then, the skeletons on the Bone Mountain seemed to be stirred up by an invisible force. They flew up and assembled into skeletons one after another. Their empty eyes burned with scarlet flames, emitting shocking coldness and ferocity. A chill rose from the depths of his heart and gushed out like a spring. Qinzong's face was solemn. Could the so-called corpse prison be these zombies and skeletons? The zombies abruptly leaped high into the air, bringing with them a terrifying aura of decay as they charged towards Qinzong. The scene of hundreds and thousands of zombies leaping towards him shocked Qinzong greatly. The skeletons, on the other hand, were like thousands of soldiers and horses galloping wildly. Their shocking, murderous aura surged as if they were going to devour Qinzong. Alone with a sword in his hand, Qinzong stood still and stared coldly ahead, facing the attack of the corpse prison army. Killing tribulation and refining heart meant killing to get out of the corpse prison. However, in this killing, one's mind could not be confused by killing intent. Instead, one had to kill with one's heart in a sober state. The gilded mountain sword swept out as if it could split thousands of soldiers. Its momentum was vigorous and overbearing, and the sword's edge was terrifying. The sword light swept across the sky like a crescent moon. More than a dozen zombies were swept past, and they paused for a moment before being cut in half at the waist. With the sword in his hand, Qinzong was like an invincible god of war on the battlefield. Kill. 100, 200, 800, 900, 1,000. As he kept killing, Qinzong gradually came to a realization. Killing tribulation and refining heart. Keeping one's heart unshaken in the killing and not being confused or disturbed by the killing intent was refining heart. This seemed to be easy for Qinzong. With Qinzong's soul strength, spiritual willpower, and sword principle realm, this kind of killing could not affect him at all. The killing became nothing. The river of corpses and the mountain of skeletons collapsed under Qinzong's sword and turned into ashes. The world in front of him began to collapse. Qinzong's expression did not change at all. He was only calm, and he watched it all with cold eyes. Shortly after, the crumbling world began to disappear. Qinzong was slightly taken aback. He had returned to the originally spacious hall. However, he was the only one in the hall. Zheng Tuo and the other three were nowhere to be seen. Wait, Qinzong guessed that maybe they had entered the so-called corpse prison like him, but they had not killed their way out. While waiting, Qinzong began to cultivate. Time passed slowly. After about a few minutes, a figure from the void became solid. It was Zheng Tuo. Zheng Tuo saw Qinzong as soon as he appeared, and he was stunned at first. "Brother Qin, have you been to the corpse prison?" Zheng Tuo asked. "Yes," Qinzong replied. "I admire you." Zheng Tuo sighed sincerely. Only those who had personally experienced the so-called corpse prisons test knew how difficult it was. Zheng Tuo was ranked 80th on the Netherworld list, while Qinzong was ranked 93rd. There was a gap of 13 places between them. However, when dealing with the fiendish corpses, Qinzong used a mysterious method to absorb the majestic fiendish qi. After that, he killed 12 fiendish corpses, which was only one less than Zheng Tuo. However, one had to know that Qinzong's title was Primeval Sword. He was best at defensive sword techniques, Primeval Impenetrable Primeval Sword. On the other hand, his title was Mad Slash. He was best at attacking. Therefore, the 13 fiendish corpses he killed were actually not more than Qinzong. Now, Qinzong had broken through the corpse prison one step ahead of him. "Brother Qin, I'm sure that your ranking on the Netherworld list will soon surpass mine," Zheng Tuo said seriously. Brother Zheng, thank you for your kind words, Chunzong said with a smile. This answer indirectly acknowledged Zheng Tuo's words and also showed Chunzong's great confidence in himself. Surpass Zheng Tuo. For Chunzong, it was only a matter of time. Zheng Tuo's cultivation was at the high level of the half-saint realm. It was very difficult to go further in the half-saint realm, and there was very little room for improvement. Chunzong seemed to be at the middle level of the half-saint realm, but in fact, he was only at the low level of the half-saint realm. He had just broken through to the low level of the half-saint realm, so there was still a lot of room for improvement. At a glance, one could see that Chunzong's potential was higher than Zheng Tuo's. When his cultivation reached the middle level of the half-saint realm, Zheng Tuo would definitely not be his opponent. Even at the low level of the half-saint realm, Chunzong was confident that he could surpass Zheng Tuo. The two did not talk much, and started to cultivate separately. The heavenly sons of heaven on the netherworld list were not bragging, but real strength. Each of them was very serious and worked very hard, but they would not waste time, not to mention that they had gained from the test. After about a dozen breaths, the third figure appeared. It was Nan Wukong. When he saw Zheng Tuo, Nan Wukong was not surprised, but when he saw Chunzong, the surprise on his face was very obvious. He had actually passed the corpse prison's test earlier than him. Before long, Jackdaw's figure also appeared. Last was Lin Yi, the mysterious sky sword. Seeing that he was the last to appear, which meant that he was the last to pass the test, Lin Yi's face darkened slightly. Chapter 1347. The atmosphere in the main hall of the Heavenly Wolf sect in the Moving Cloud Mansion was so cold and oppressive that it was hard to breathe. The Heavenly Wolf sect leader sat at the head of the table with a cold expression on his face. His body was surrounded by a terrifying murderous aura. The others lowered their heads and did not dare to speak. They were afraid of angering the Heavenly Wolf sect leader. They had only received the news that Li Xiaolang had been killed in mysterious underworld city not long ago. After all, Li Xiaolang and his fourth heaven Saint Rudiment stage bodyguard had died. No one had deliberately sent the news back. Therefore, they had received the news a little late. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Wolf sect did not have good intelligence. After all, the Heavenly Wolf sect was one of the major forces in Moving Cloud Mansion. However, it was nothing compared to the entire mysterious underworld region. The Heavenly Wolf sect had wanted to enter mysterious underworld city and set up a base there. Unfortunately, resources were limited. The mysterious underworld palace and the other major forces did not allow it. Speak. What should we do? Aren't all of you good at talking? The Heavenly Wolf sect leader suddenly roared. Sect leader, Chunzong, is on the underworld ranking. He's also in mysterious underworld city and is valued by Wine Sage. It'll be difficult to deal with him. One of the elders gritted his teeth and said. Immediately, he felt a cold gaze on him. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He regretted speaking up. However, since he had spoken up, he had to continue speaking. He had to make it sound reasonable. If we take revenge, it'll be fine if we succeed. However, if we fail, it'll be very disadvantageous for us. I suggest we ask someone to do it. The elder felt the cold gaze and quickly added, I think that the infamous Black Fiend would be very happy to do this sort of thing. Black Fiend, the Heavenly Wolf sect leader's eyes narrowed. The Black Fiend was a dark force. It was the largest dark force in the mysterious underworld region. It was as powerful as the mysterious underworld palace. Moreover, it was hidden in the dark and was very difficult to deal with. The Black Fiend loved to assassinate the geniuses of the righteous forces. If they asked the Black Fiend for help, they would definitely not refuse. However, the Heavenly Wolf sect was considered a righteous force. The Heavenly Wolf sect leader weighed the pros and cons. If others found out that they had contacted the Black Fiend to assassinate the righteous Dao's netherworld ranking prodigies, the consequences would be dire. Their entire sect would be annihilated. Third Elder, I'll leave this matter to you. The Heavenly Wolf sect master's eyes flickered with a faint green luster as he spoke in a low voice. All right. Third elder, who was the one who suggested asking He Sha for help, could only bitterly agree. No matter what, finding the Black Fiend was risky. However, it was better than doing it himself. As long as he kept it a secret, the Heavenly Wolf sect would be fine. As a powerful dark force, it was natural for them to have many secret strongholds. Some of their strongholds were even on the surface, disguised as inns, restaurants, and even small shops. They were simply omnipresent and impossible to guard against. Han Yuan's sword Chun Zong, ranked 93rd on the Netherworld leaderboard. The mission has been confirmed. The minimum requirement is bronze rank. Soon, the communication was completed, and the Black Fiend issued the mission. At this moment, Chun Zong and the other 4 prodigies of the Netherworld rankings were staying in the ancient Mystic Society's mystic grounds. The 5 of them had passed the corpse prison test left behind by the corpse Taoist. When they appeared in the main hall, a sudden change occurred. The ground of the main hall shook and slowly cracked open. An extremely dense, decaying evil aura spread out like rolling black smoke. It was very ominous. Chun Zong felt his heart palpitate. This evil aura was different from the previous evil aura. He did not dare to absorb it. At least, his main body did not dare to touch it. Otherwise, his vitality would be damaged. On the other hand, the Azura clone might be able to absorb it, but it had to leave his main body. Now that there were others present, Chun Zong naturally would not expose the Azura clone. Amidst the black, decaying evil aura, there was a stone coffin. The stone coffin was huge and heavy, emitting an ancient aura. There were many distorted faces carved on the stone coffin. It was extremely strange, causing one's heart to turn cold. Could this be the opportunity that the corpse Taoist mentioned? Was the stone coffin a treasure? Or was there something in the stone coffin? A fiendish corpse? Guesses flashed through everyone's minds. Cracking sounds rang out continuously. It was very ear-piercing and shocking. The 5 of them narrowed their eyes and stared at the stone coffin that was slowly opening. Their bodies tensed up, and their energy circulated endlessly. They were ready to launch a powerful attack at any time. However, after the stone coffin's lid was completely opened, nothing strange or dangerous happened. A figure, or rather a body, was lying quietly inside. The body was wrapped in black cloth from head to toe. Its face could not be seen clearly, but there was no vitality. There was only a trace of decaying and vicissitude aura spreading out. It contained traces of evil aura. The evil aura was so pure that even Chun Zong's Azura clone, Chun Xiao, was shocked. 5 juniors, this is the opportunity that I left here. It's a corpse puppet. The corpse Taoist's voice rang out. Keek keek, the corpse puppet is right here. After cultivating it for so long, it should have the strength of the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage. However, it's up to you how to control it. The corpse Taoist's voice fell silent. The 5 of them emitted a blazing light as they stared at the corpse puppet in the stone coffin. If they could control the corpse puppet at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage, it would definitely be a great help. At the very least, it would be a great life-saving trump card. However, at the end of the day, they were invited by the ancient Mystic Society to explore the secret place at a high price. The harvest in the secret place should belong to the ancient Mystic Society. Moreover, even if they obtained the corpse puppet at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage, they did not have the corresponding method to control it. If they wanted to obtain the method to control it, they would have to pay a price that they could not bear. Lin Yi waved his hand and stored the stone coffin and the corpse puppet into his spatial ring. The exploration of the secret place had ended, and the so-called secret was revealed. Naturally, the 5 of them would not stay any longer. They left the secret place one after another. They're all out. The 8th Heaven Saint Rudiment stage commander sighed in relief when he saw them. He had been a little worried during this period of time. After all, they were 5 prodigies on the Dark Nether ranking. If they died in the secret place, it would be a great loss to the mystic Nether territory. This was especially true for Lin Yi. He was a prodigy on the Dark Nether ranking whom the ancient Mystic Society had carefully cultivated. They could not afford to lose him. Fortunately, they had all come out alive. It seemed like they did not suffer any losses. "Have you finished exploring the secret place?" Commander Lin asked again, staring at Lin E with a hint of hope in his eyes. "We'll talk about it when we get back," Lin E said, nodding immediately. Immediately, under the escort of Commander Lin and the other Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses, they quickly left and returned to Mystic Nether City. As for the secret place, it was naturally useless. With a group of Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses escorting them, they were naturally safe. After all, if they wanted to touch them, they would have to send a stronger powerhouse. After entering Mystic Nether City, they headed to the ancient Mystic Tower. The four of them waited on the 5th floor of the ancient Mystic Tower. Manager Lin greeted them and chatted with them, asking about their encounters after entering the secret place. It was not a secret, so naturally, he would not deliberately hide it. As for Lin E, he left with a corpse puppet. It was a corpse puppet at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage. Its value was astonishing. Since the ancient mystic society was rich, it was not impossible for them to obtain a method to control the corpse puppet. With the corpse puppet at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage, the ancient mystic society's top forces would be strengthened again. Naturally, they would be confident in guarding their amazing wealth and expanding further. The corpse Taoist. I didn't expect it to be a cave mansion left behind by him. On the 5th floor of the ancient Mystic Tower, Manager Lin was shocked after hearing the news. The corpse Taoist was a peerless monster in the Mystic Nether territory. He did not expect it to be left behind by him. Moreover, it was a corpse puppet at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage. This time, the ancient mystic society had made a huge profit. As for now, it was time to wait for the ancient mystic society to give the 4 prodigies of the underworld list the follow-up rewards. The initial rewards had already been given, and the follow-up rewards were related to the harvest in the secret place. The greater the harvest, the greater the reward. They did not have to wait for too long. After about an hour, there was news. After the ancient mystic society's high-level evaluation, there are 2 follow-up rewards for the 4 of you. The first is to choose one of the 2. Manager Lin seemed to be a little surprised. He glanced over and continued. First, each of you can get 2,000 Earth Essence pills. Second, or a treasure equivalent to 2,000 Earth Essence pills. Shenzong and the other 3 fell silent. It was not that they thought it was too little, but it was a lot. 2,000 Earth Essence pills. One had to know that the initial rewards they received were worth about 300 to 400 Earth Essence pills. It was already considered good, but now it had increased by more than 5 times. As expected, the follow-up rewards were really shocking. Manager Lin, what's the second reward? Shenzong asked. Although he was surprised, he was still clear-headed. The second reward is a discount from my ancient Mystic Tower. From now on, if the 4 of you come to my ancient Mystic Tower to buy anything, you'll get a 20% discount, Manager Lin said. This reward surprised everyone. Who did not know that the Ancient Mystic Society and the Ancient Mystic Tower were the largest trading company in Mystic Nether City? They sold many treasures, a 20% discount, and it was a 20% discount no matter what treasure it was. It was really shocking. 2,000 Earth Essence pills. 20% discount. It was indeed a huge sum. I choose 2,000 Earth Essence pills, Shenzong said with a smile. Now that he was cultivating, he had enough pills for the time being. After he finished consuming them, he could come to the ancient Mystic Tower to buy more. In the end, there was not much difference between choosing 2,000 Earth Essence pills or treasures that were worth 2,000 Earth Essence pills. It was just a matter of which was which. However, it was more convenient to choose the Earth Essence pills. Not only could they be used for cultivation, but they could also be used as currency. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Zheng Tuo, Nen Wukong, and Jackdaw also made their choices. 2,000 Earth Essence pills. I wonder what you think of our ancient mystic society. Manager Lin asked with a smile. Jackdaw did not speak, but the 3 of them said that they had a good impression of the ancient mystic society. Then I wonder if you are willing to join our Ancient Mystic Society? Manager Lin asked again if he could recruit these underworld leaderboard geniuses to become members of the Ancient Mystic Society. Its potential would greatly increase. Manager Lin also promised that as long as they joined the Ancient Mystic Society, they would receive the most important training. Unfortunately, the four of them refused. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.